anyway.
Yeah. I think we are live. Let me just double check. And if we are, we will begin the show. Hang on. Yeah. Oh, there we go. We are live. All right.
Cool, man.
Fellas, welcome. It's good to see everybody. This is just me and Colin shooting the shit. This is going to go behind a paywall after it's live. I kind of changed my mind on that. These shows are better when there's lots of people shooting the shit with us. So most of it is going to be Colin and I talking. And then Colin, if you're cool with it, we'll open it up to people who just want to ask questions and whatnot.
Yeah, whatever you want. I don't
obviously,
care.
if they're, don't be a dick or be a dick. Colin,
yeah, we do call-ins
down.
We do call-ins at Last Stand, but we do them live to tape. So we just tell anyone if like you're a dickhead, you just don't appear on the show. But
yeah,
this is a little more dangerous, but it's okay. I don't care.
We'll just ban them.
No one can say anything meaner than me than all the things that have already been said about me.
Oh, I'm sure that's not true. give them, come on now. Come on.
Don't challenge them.
Yeah. But so if you're being ignored in the chat, I'm going to focus on Colin for a while, and then we'll bring you guys in if you want to come on the camera and you want to talk to me and Colin. Most of this is going to be about a tweet I did the night of the Oscars as it relates to an email Colin sent me after that tweet went out. But obviously it can devolve into whatever's fun for us to
as it usually does.
So, yeah, exactly. So, but let me show you guys the tweet. Let me get you guys up to speed. So I haven't seen this movie, but this is a tweet that went out from the woman who won the Oscar for, I believe, Best Supporting Actress for the movie The Holdovers. Colin, have you seen this movie yet?
No, I have seen almost no movies in the last 5 years, probably. So yeah, no.
Wow,
nothing.
okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to see Civil War?
I'd like to, but I always say that that's probably the 25th movie in the last 3 years. I said, yeah, I'd like to see that. And then I just never do. Barbie, Oppenheimer, like everything. I just never see
I didn't give a shit about Oppenheimer. I watched about 40 minutes and I thought it was good, but I'm like, okay. I know how it ends.
Civil War is a cool idea, especially because it's about journalists, but I don't like that it seems like Alex Garland, right? That's the guy's name that did it.
Great.
It seems like they made an intentional choice to not make it rooted in reality in any way so that no one can get it mixed up simply based on the premise. So to me, I'm like, I would have liked something a little more serious, but I'm sure it'll be good. It looks cool.
I'm going to see it. I'm going to talk about it. I mean, it's my prepper movie because I'm sure that's where we're all going.
Hell yeah.
Okay. So, but she wins the Oscar and, whatever you think of the Oscars, she's emotional about it. She gives a shit. And she goes up there and she says, the first thing she says, God is good. God is good. Now, and then she went into a speech, and I don't really watch the Oscars anymore. I was just kind of skipping through it and whatnot. And I was just like, I did this tweet. I'm not going to read you the whole tweet, but you'll get the gist in the first paragraph or two. I said, I've not seen this movie yet. I hear it's amazing and she's wonderful. She sounds like a very well-deserved award. Congrats to her. But opening her speech with repeated God is goods is simply vulgar at this stage in humanity. Such a lack of awareness of all the horrors going on out there. And she thinks God made sure she got her little statue. Come the fuck on. I won't read you the entire or any of the email that Colin sent me, but the gist of it was, are you okay?
You make it sound so bad. It was fine.
No, but it was like, have you fallen down and hurt your head? Yeah, I mean, Colin was basically kind of going, I'm not religious, maybe spiritual, but you seem real flippant about this. What's going on? And so I figured we talk about it because we talk about religion and we talk about topics like that people say you're not supposed to talk about, which I think is ridiculous. I will say, though, the God is good thing, there were a number of members in, I guess, Twitter and on the Gavin Games community where they hit me up and said, part of it's a black thing, like a cultural thing. I guess God is good is a, so if you take it like that, and they were saying she wasn't necessarily, she might have been, but she wasn't necessarily literally talking about Yahweh. She probably was, but she was also doing that kind of, it's a saying, which is just like, oh, every fucking day we have another day, God is good, and it's more embedded in the culture. And so, so I get that. I've heard that makes a lot of sense, but regardless of what this individual woman meant, I do think Colin's question is, it's one I think about a lot. I am an agnostic atheist. And I'm curious what brought your email on, Colin.
Well, because I think Well, I see things that you say all the time, and I always find them interesting. That's why I like having you on our shows so much. And people say I should, finally adopt you into LSM totally, but I'm like, I don't think Jaffe wants that. I think Jaffe likes being a free agent.
I don't even know what the difference is at this point. You just call me and
I don't really
I
either.
show up.
Other than that, I pretend I own you, I guess, in some way. Not like I do.
Oh, that's going to cost you a little more money.
So,
but it's interesting. Somebody said to me today, I always read the comments, and somebody on the last one we did together said, Colin never pushes back with Jaffe. He pushes back with everybody else, but he doesn't push back with Jaffe. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true. I don't think that's true. But if it is,
go. I'm sorry.
Push back. I like pushback.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's easier to be on a show and be the guest and push back than be the host.
Yeah.
Like I want to set an environment at Sacred and on other shows we do where it doesn't devolve into something more hostile. And so to me, I think it's important to just take on what people say and then parse through it. But I don't need to. People think that like everything I say, everything gets past the goalie, and only the things that I actually like say I have a problem with, right? It's like, no, that's not really the way you interview people. At least if you want to interview people more than once.
Do you consider them interviews when we talk? I just consider them talking. There happens to be a camera.
Yeah, I don't. I guess that's fair. What I will say is that because we're doing it as sort of a performance, there has to be someone steering it in some way, in my opinion. It's not like we're at a cafe and we just met and there's no arbitration or anything. It's just like, oh, we're just talking. But that's not, I don't know if that's conducive to publicly consumed content. So no, I agree with what you're saying, but I feel like I want to be approachable and kind to people as generally as possible and kind of reserve my reservation or have reservations and keep my powder dry. I don't interview people like that. So I understand what people are saying, but I think but I think that you and I get into in all sorts of things.
Shenanigans. So now let's go back to your email. So what did you mean when you wrote me? What were you thinking? What were you feeling about that?
That's a good question, because I feel like you've been, and flippant, I think is the word I used, and then you use that word too, where it's like, I've heard you be this way about organized religion before. You even asked me a question once when you were on one of our shows, which I wasn't really offended by, but that I would, because I don't really get offended by things, but not many things, but that you were like, your dad is deeply religious. How do you take him intellectually seriously? Is basically what you said to me. And I told you that I would argue that my dad is smarter than both of us, and that there's not a he's certainly better educated than both of us, like literally. But whether or not that matters to you, I don't really care. But about any of that thing. But it seemed like this was a theme for you, and there was something specific you said in your tweet that I had a problem with, where it's like, she can live in her delusion, but that indicates that you yourself don't live in any delusions, and that those delusions don't have downstream effects on society or other people, or ignore the realities of what's happening in the world, or any of the things that you named, the starvation and the war and the death and all this kind of stuff. And I totally agree with that. But this is obviously done and from my perspective, she's talking from a Judeo-Christian point of view in some sense, probably maybe even broadly deistically in some sense. But to me, in 2024, Judeo-Christianity is like the least of our worries. So especially about the things people believe, the dogmas that people believe, and all of the rest. Like, I think Judeo-Christianity is of really no consequence at this point to worsening the situation. And though I grew up culturally Catholic, you're even in a situation now where fucking Dawkins is saying that he's culturally Christian, which I couldn't believe it when I saw that circulating. And I was like, Richard Dawkins said he was culturally Christian. And then I went and listened to it, and he was talking about comparing to Islam or whatever. And that's, the places you want to live and all that. And I feel like that's a fairly obvious and easy choice. So I don't blame him for that. But so to me, it really comes from that. It's not that I just saw that tweet and I was like, oh, I have a problem with that tweet. It's like, this is a bit of a pattern, in my opinion. And so I wanted to just ask you about it and kind of not confront you about it, because you can really believe whatever you want.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But it just seems like we all should be allowed, in like the mystic human existence, perhaps all of us should be allowed some level of delusion. I know you believe things that I think are delusional, and so it's like,
what do I believe that you think is delusion?
I actually wrote down something that you said. You said, and this is a really particularly easy quote, but you said, I've always been woke. That to me, I don't like using that word. I don't really know what it means.
Well, that's yeah. What does it mean? But still, yeah.
We have to, but I think we generally have the idea. It's kind of like when people used to say like trigger warning or like that kind of stuff. I'm like, I get what you mean, but it's not really the kind of word I want to use to describe it. But
yeah, I don't do yeah.
But to me, like wokeism, whatever you might want to call that, I think we have a general clouded idea of what it means. I think those are a series of delusions, right? That fall under that umbrella about the nature of humans and the nature of society and all of those kinds of things. I think you're allowed to believe that stuff, but it's not.
But give me an example. Like what's a delusion I live under in your opinion? I'm not saying you're wrong. I probably do, but I'm curious.
Well, you believe in gender, like the gender thing, don't you? Like that men can become women and women can become men. To me, that's
define that though, because the problem with that is, I think when a lot of people talk about that, what they and it's kind of like all these shorthand things like defund the police, or there's one the conservatives have right now, which is like they really fucked themselves by going with that title. I forget what it was, but it's like it's a shorthand, but it's not a literal shorthand for most people. So when a lot of conservatives come at people who are trans allies or trans themselves, and they go, "You're delusional. You think a man can become a woman." And it's like, if what you think I'm saying is I don't have the mental awareness that my son was a female body according to, what do they call it, presented as at birth or named at birth or whatever. Absolutely, I'm aware of that. And I'm also aware of the fact that by most people's standards, the definitions of gender are genitalia, pretty much. So I'm not delusional in the sense that I don't remember that. Nope. She came out as a girl and now he says she, it's like, no, I'm very aware. He's very aware they could have gender dysphoria. I'm very aware that he's very aware that he knows he was assigned at birth as a girl. And I'm very aware that if your definition of the sexes stops at the vagina or penis, then yes, of course, no one is suggesting that. I don't believe a man can magically turn into your definition of a woman. But I think when someone like me that's a supporter or the father of a trans person says, I support that view, it's more about going, we don't really have a clear-cut definition, depending on who you ask, of sort of what gender is and what sex is. In terms of like, it's some people will say it's fluid. Biology will say it's fluid. I think that's correct. But the people who want a black and white definition, of course, it's never going to square with what they're saying. And I get that. And I would never try to, I'm not suggesting that it should, because that doesn't work for their definition. So I would agree with you. I would be delusional if I believed that definition, but that's not the definition I'm using when I say I definitely believe when, my son says I'm a guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But I think you said something interesting, which was assigned at birth and my definition and all of these things. And I think this is where, and I don't like talking about this really with you because I know you have a trans child and I'm not really comfortable going there.
I'm very comfortable going there because I don't think you have a mean bone in your body. I think you have your opinion and we can talk about it. But I bring it up only as it relates, but we can talk about whatever you want, but as it relates to the delusional part, because I do hear a lot of people say that. It's like, you're crazy that you think a guy can magically become a girl. And it's like, I don't think it's a magic thing like that. I don't think, I think it's nuanced, it's detailed. This person who was born this way feels this way. And biology is pointing to the fact that there may very well be a reason, or it could just be a flat out good old fashioned mental disease. Whatever it is, I don't care. I know that the comfort of most people that I know that are trans lies in some kind of affirmation and some kind of expression of that feeling, whether it's full on transition or it's just pronouns or whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. I'm a compassionate guy. Why not? But I don't believe though that if you came to me and said, Jaffe, I am now a woman, by most people's standards, I would say, you're probably not. But by the standards that have been explained to me by doctors of like, this is actually what a woman is or a man is, and it's fluid, and we're doing a lot. There's a lot of markers that aren't just the most obvious. It wouldn't surprise me, and it wouldn't surprise them if in 5 years, 2 years, whatever, we're like, hey, you know what? There's like 20 different things that determine what we think of as masculine and feminine. And, people get a mix, and sometimes you get a mix that makes you feel like you're in the wrong body. I don't think that's beyond possible. I'd go, oh, okay. Because we've had trans people with us since the dawn of time.
Yeah, maybe. But I think, see, I have to like, let me draw the predicate here for how I feel. I don't really, actually, I did a video back in like Colin's Last Stand in 2017, I think, about trans rights, where I was like, it seems to me that these people are like the new downtrodden civil rights kind of group that needs to be kind of paid attention to and uplifted in some way. However, I think that things have been rapidly bastardized in the world of gender ideology, specifically because like what you're saying is kind of what I'm getting at, which is it's deeply dogmatic. There are a series of things you have to believe that can't be proven. It's really, it is religious. You have your sacred, cows, and you have all these kinds of things that can or cannot go on after. So the important thing for me to kind of lay out is I don't really give a shit what people do as adults. If you want to, and I don't mean to be like, flippant with it at all. If you want to go cut your dick off and go do whatever you want to do and live, I don't care. I really don't give a shit. I have two problems, though, that I think are important. Number one is you can't control what I believe about you.
Of course.
And this seems to be a big thing where it's like, you're not like, if you are born a man and you have surgery and live your life as a woman, even if you could be a compelling looking woman, right? Mm-hmm. You're not a woman. You're not going to convince me you're a woman. You're not really a woman. I always find it weird when people are like, I had sex with a trans person and I didn't know. It's like, I don't know how you couldn't know. Like, I would see you naked and know immediately. Whatever the case might be, it's obvious. So,
well, I'm confused by that one. I mean, you're telling there are trans people that go full on transition. How would you know?
I know, but they're not convincing. I mean, if you see,
I've never looked. I don't know.
I mean, go look at like a trans penis and tell me that it looks anything like your penis.
Why? Yeah. It's never occurred to me to go do that, but I guess I can do that now. Let me look it up.
Yeah, no, you can do it. It's hard.
Wow.
I mean, you should know exactly what to search for.
I mean, I'm going just search for naked trans. I don't want to do it right now. I'll do it later.
Yeah. Well, just my point is that we know just by looking, like, even if you take like the most convincing, like I was friends with Blair White when I was in LA. I haven't seen her in years, but I had dinner with her and like,
I don't know who that is.
Oh, she's like a very convincing trans woman. Like,
okay.
Like, probably one of the best passing trans women you will ever see.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, cool. That's what you choose to be. And that's how you choose to live your life. And I have no problem with that. But she would never go up to you and say like, well, you have to believe that I'm an indistinguishable woman that needs to go to the gynecologist, needs to play on women's sports teams, and I'm like, no, see, this is where you're infringing on me.
Let me ask you about that, because I could be wrong on this, but I get the feeling a lot of people are fed that is happening en masse. I know there are sensationalistic stories or there are viral videos or whatever, but have you ever had a person in your life come up to you and demand a level of treatment? Let's just say in this case that they're a trans person that you feel is like, you can't tell me. I mean, I've never experienced that. I don't know people who are like that. I know that they exist, that are that dogmatic, as you say, or that are that militant, but do you think most of that is sort of media, hyped up in order to generate controversy? Like, is that really what's happening out there, or is that what's happening on the front page of whatever, not Fox News, what's the Ben Shapiro channel, the Daily Beast or something, or the what's this company called?
Oh, Daily Wire.
Yeah. I mean, is that a real, you lived in San Francisco for a long time. I mean, did you see this as a real problem?
Yeah, I lived there for 10 years. First of all, it's an aside, but every gay man I've ever met basically hates all this shit and hates
Okay.
like the whole like Rainbow Brigade, like all of that. They hate it. Like, Gen X, millennial, and even older gay men hate this shit. So there's a whole division there as well. And that's the failure of intersectionality, which we can get into, which is like so easy to dissect. That's why no one ever wants to debate it. But the situation about it goes back to if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, like, does it make any noise kind of situation? And I'm like, yeah, but like, there's lots of noise. Just because it's propagated through the news doesn't mean that this isn't happening. From Leah Thomas in NCAA swimming to, women's rugby, I think in Australia, to like the NCAA and the Olympic Committee having to kind of come down.
The sports thing is I want to talk about that, but that's a separate thing, right? The sports thing can easily be solved. But I'm talking about the thing where people are telling you how to feel or you what to say, or you to say you go to a gynecologist. That's how much of a woman you are now that you've.
That those things do happen though, just because
but
they
have
don't.
You experience them?
No, but I don't really talk to anyone. I mean, like I actually like, it's like, no, it hasn't happened to me. I'm not around like in my everyday life a trans person. So no, that's not happened to me. But I do feel like it is happening. You can just read about it, about like the levels of care for different genders and all this. This is what I'm saying about, I don't care how you live, but it can't infringe on reality in any way, really. Like,
I understand. I'm just asking you, how realistic is the fact that it's frequently infringing on your reality? Because I know my son who has a bunch of trans friends, and they just want people to leave them alone and stop picking on them. They're not going around going, you have to call me this. They're just going, can we fucking go to the goddamn, Fall Out Boy concert and you leave us the fuck alone?
That's that's totally fair. Like, I think that probably is most people. And I've never had I've known, frankly, many trans people in my life. I've not had like bad experiences with them or anything like that. I remember being at Fox when I was at IGN. Fox owned us when I first went there. And we had a meeting, I think in 2007, where one of the people at GameSpy transitioned. Mm-hmm. And he was going to be she, and this was going to be her name, and all this kind of stuff. And everyone's like, all right. I mean, like, it seemed so quaint at the time, like no one cared.
Right.
It's so strange. And then the next year in California was Prop 8, which you probably remember, which was the gay marriage prop, which failed. And gay marriage was still illegal in California. And you did see at that time, it's like, wow, there is a little bit of a mix up about the signals that culture sends. So I guess I say that to say, like, I think that these things do happen. I think that they happen with increasing. I think I live in the South. And I don't live in the deep South. There's really not a lot of things happening here. But I was just in Boston. I was just in New York City. And you see pride flags and trans flags all over the place. You see pictures of the White House with massive trans and gay rights flags all over the place. You see crosswalks in Washington, D.C. that are gay right flags and trans. It's like, what is going on with all of this stuff? Why can't we just be reserved and live to our own specifications without having to propagandize everyone around us to believe a certain number of things that are probably not true? And this is what I go back to about your level of that you live in your own. It's not that you're not right to it. I'm just saying you have your own dogmas. You have your own sacred cows.
I don't think you're wrong that someone could point those out. I don't think it's the trans thing though. And again, my mind is open, but it's like and again, I know this isn't what the conversation is supposed to be, but it is fascinating to me because I do think your point of like, how can you push back on someone else's dogma when you aren't pushing back on your own? I think that's a very important aspect that we need to figure out because it absolutely cuts to the quick of it. But I need, again, we're not going to arrive at a conclusion, but I just want to, say to the trans thing, the idea that you go to New York or you go to Washington and you see everything decked out in rainbows. I mean, at the White House, I would argue that it's like, well, it's America's house, and how many times, there's a giant Christmas tree, and there's a menorah, and if it was up to me, there'd be what do they call it? A bet-a-math or the Satan thing. I don't give a fuck.
Behemoth or whatever. Yeah.
I'm fine. Go,
or whatever. Yeah.
Beth. Yeah. But in terms of like businesses and stuff, I mean, how many fucking pictures are there in Times Square since the beginning of heteronormative couples, in romantic comedies, or here's Sephora and the makeup store, and here's the girl looking all nice as the guy looks on in the background like, oh, I can't wait to fuck her tonight. I mean, I know that that's, quote, the normal, or that's the majority, but it's like, that's everywhere. If these businesses, we're both free enterprise guys, if these businesses want to, quote, risk their reputation by going, we are publicly loud and proud supporting this.
You think that that's a risk? That's interesting.
Well, if you're Bud Light, or what was that beer that got?
Oh yeah, Bud Light. That was because I would argue that that's kind of an offshoot, because like look at what happened with Planet Fitness recently and all that kind of stuff. I think Bud Light ended up being kind of a good punching bag and a reasonable punching bag.
What about Gillette though? Gillette wasn't a trans thing, but Gillette was very much pushing a more leftist woke agenda with the whole men are bad kind of thing. And then they backtrack because it hurt sales. You're saying it's not a risk when these people go?
I think putting a gay pride flag outside of your business is probably one of the safest, most normative things you can do in 2024. Yeah. I don't think there's any risk at all. In fact, I think that the risk would be, I used to notice this in Santa Monica when we would go downtown. And you're very familiar with it. The businesses are lining the road near where that think tank is. Why can't I think of the name of it? That huge building on the water. I keep wanting to say CERN. That's not what it's called, though, obviously. Anyway, there's like a main road there, all of these different shops and stuff like that. And it's so funny because what is June gay pride month or whatever, or something like that, May. And it's like everyone's got their flags out, and half of them are wrinkled because they just came out of the cellophane. And like, it's like, you notice when one of them doesn't. Right. It's like, I just find that so strange because it is.
No, and it's very different.
Normative. It is comical how normative it is at this point.
Right. Almost as normative as people, after 9/11 driving around with American flags on their cars, acting as if you are so patriotic that you don't have a problem voting in people that are creating foreign policy that are putting us in these situations in the first place. I mean, there's a lot of people who wave their various flags without really understanding what they're waving.
Yeah, Queers for Palestine. I mean, that's classic.
That's now, but I mean, like just the whole patriotism thing. It's like, the irony of being upset with people who protest the government for certain wars being called non-patriots and traitors, and you don't put a flag on your car. I mean, so you must be a bad American. It's like, bitch, I'm a good American. That's what America's for. I have a right to do that. Right. We know that.
Sure. Well, you and I totally agree on this, because I had told you recently, I think I said like, shove another gay pride flag down my throat. Right. And then I was like, but understand
I will say the shove down throat line that a lot of people use on this, there's some weird queer coding going on there, because I would have never, I'm not even joking. It's like, why is it shoved? Is it meant to suggest a dick in a man's mouth?
It could. I don't know. It doesn't for me. It doesn't for me, Okay.
All right. Keep going though.
But I mean, whatever. I've long talked about how I'm like a very feminine man in some ways. I'm not like scared of this conversation at all.
Feminine in so many. I'm super masculine in like 3 ways. I should have had a born with a vagina in some ways, because the movies I like and the music I like. Oh, I'm so not your typical.
I was the only straight man in Downton Abbey, the last previous movie, in a full ass theater. One of the most full movies I've seen probably ever, actually.
Yeah, but
but I was like, everyone looked at me like I was crazy, and I'm like, no, I grew up with sisters and a mom. Like they used to dress me up in girls' clothes, and I used to play with their Barbies with them and all this. Like, I'm not afraid of that. This is going to get into the conversation later about or maybe a conversation we can have about why I think the major problem with gender ideology is simply that we don't look at masculinity and femininity broadly enough to realize that it could just be interpreted as anything. We used to have those kinds of interpretations.
Did we? I mean, I think you're right about it, but we used to have those kind of interpretations. We used to be accepting of that.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, let's go back to like our childhood. I
dressed up as Wonder Woman. My brother made me a Wonder Woman costume. He ended up being gay, but I wore the Wonder Woman costume because I thought she was cool. But I also had a Captain America costume.
It's like my sisters, my sister Allie especially. I'm the youngest of 4, but when we would play, they would play G.I. Joe with us sometimes, and they would always want to be Lady J or Scarlet or something like that, right? But my sister Allie was also like an athlete, and she was a tomboy, and she played video games and all that kind of stuff. And no one ever and when she wore a prom dress or had a boyfriend or anything like that, no one really ever questioned that. I think that's silent normativity. Like, this is just we have a broad array of like the most lesbian fucking butch women you can possibly ever imagine in like a leather vest and motorcycle, like, in a fucking motorcycle gang, all the way to whatever everyone thinks the feminine ultra, sweet, that Sweeney chick, right? As like the other side of the Sydney Sweeney. And I think that's a positive and normal way to just look at the way you're born. I mean, this is why I think ultimately the trans issue. So I should back up to just kind of finish laying the foundation for how I feel, which is I really don't care what 18-year-old and up, and that age is just the arbitrary age that we've created in the United States, but whatever it might be, 21 or 16 or whatever age. It's like, I'm really kind of cool with you doing unto yourself at that point.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that it requires like new definitions for words, new ideas put into society about the way we look at gender. Like I was saying earlier about like your assignment at birth. It's like, you're not assigned at birth, dude. You're born a man or a woman. And a very, 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 very minute number of people are born intersex. Like
right.
Shockingly few. And that's basically it. You're either born a man or you're born a woman. And then I find it very dark.
Come on. As a journalist, and now as a chef with words, I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. As somebody who values clearly the written word and the spoken word, nuanced language is important. So yes, there's absolute. Hang on. I have no idea what's happening. Hang on. Can you hear all that?
No, I heard a little bit of something in the background. That's your phone going off or something.
Christ. Yeah, I got this computer and I hooked my phone up to it because I'm like, that'll be real helpful. You're an idiot, Jaffe. Shut the fuck up. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So, fuck, Colin, where were we?
I was saying how I find it weird that we have this assignment of birth thing. That's just like not a thing to me. Like that's not even in the realm of reality. It's like you're either, and let me finish this point real quick. It's like you're either born a boy or a girl. And if from my perspective, now I don't have any children yet. Hopefully Micah and I do have kids if that's what we want to do one day, and we'll see what happens.
Yep.
I don't have any trans people in my immediate family, like in my orbit, but I have quite a few gay people in my immediate orbit. So there is that. And that again is the breakdown of intersectionality and all of the rest, which we can talk about later. But I just think that you were talking about kindness and and I've often heard you speak about this, about kind of allaying the fears of a trans person, the doubts of a trans person, doing all those kinds of things and trying to kind of lean into their identity, which is not something I necessarily think is a bad idea. It's just a matter of like what you're telling them about themselves. And I don't mean you, the royal you, were telling them about themselves in the process of that. It seems to me that like it wasn't that long ago that I was watching Sesame Street in the 80s and they were telling you like, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. It doesn't matter where you were born or what situation you were born into. And now we're like telling kids, oh, you're 5 or 6 or 8 or 10, know nothing about the world, know nothing about yourself. And we're going to lean in and be like, that thing that you feel like you're a boy or you feel like a girl, that's something that maybe should be treated or we should talk about that, but leaning into it and then accepting it from like this almost biological point of view, I find very dark and strange. And it seems like regressive in a major way. Instead of just telling the kid, it's like, you can be like you wouldn't say this to an 8-year-old, right? But like, you can be a butch girl, or it's okay if you're a girl and you are attracted to other girls. And it's okay if you're a girl and you want to play with trucks. And it's okay if you're a girl and you like metal or whatever the case might be. Right. And I just think that we are almost getting so retronormative in saying like, oh, you think you're a girl, you're probably maybe a gay man, or I'm sorry, you think you're probably a gay man, you're attracted to other men, you don't really know what to do with it. What's maybe right inside your developing brain is something like, oh, I should be the other gender, so I'm attracted to the normal sex or have a heteronormative relationship. And I just think that these things, it's like, I didn't know anything about myself about when I was 10. I mean, I'm not saying that I was the smartest kid in the world. I wasn't. But it's like, you don't remember being 15 and knowing nothing, or 20. Like I was 25 and I didn't know fucking anything about the world. I was in the world. I had graduated college. I had a job and a girlfriend and a career and a place and all this. And I still was learning all sorts of things about myself.
Well,
and I just
yeah,
think,
but we've never been a species that you have to wait until you know everything before you can make a decision. I mean, I mean, that's just life, right? I mean, you're always going to be underprepared if you get outside, you walk outside the door, you never know what's going to happen. So, I mean, but I understand your point when it comes to really little kids. I don't know. I have to, I have to say, Colin, that the idea though, that you or I know better than the people living the experience seems odd to me. And
do you believe that about all psychology?
What do you mean? What aspect?
Psychology is all about, it's about trying to figure out, like, if you're honest with your therapist, like what's wrong with you, and then they know better about what is wrong with you than you do.
I don't know if a good therapist would say that, but let's assume that a lot of them do. Let's assume that's the general. I've never had a therapist that says, I know you better than you. I mean, they might, but they wouldn't say that.
But that's all right. Go on.
But let's assume they assume that. I'm not a therapist and neither are you. So all I know is when a trans person comes to me and says, this is my experience, I'm not a girl who's actually a lesbian. Take my son, for example. That kid was raised in the most liberal and with media that was heteronormative. He's always like, I grew up with the Disney Channel. I grew up with all these fucking shows. It wasn't like you guys were ever pushing anything on me. And he has a gay uncle. He has a sister who is bisexual, and it's not like the world would have closed down for him if he would have come out and said, I like women. I'm a lesbian and I was assigned at birth a girl. I know you don't like that, but I hear you.
It doesn't matter.
So it's just weird to me though, that it's like, okay, so it would suggest though, that maybe instead of going, we're allowing a level of, discussion that's just like, just call yourself a butch girl. It should just stop there. It seems weird to me that when the people who are actually living the experience are saying it's not that we're just like, nope, you're wrong. But it does go back to religion, right? Because I'm looking at these people's stuff and saying, nope, you're wrong. So let me ask you, do you think the science that is out there, whether you're talking about what the pediatrics folks say about some kind of gender affirmation care, statistically speaking, does lead to better outcomes for kids, regardless of what that care is, depends on every situation. Do you think that science is as weak as the science, quote, science of, people who believe the earth is 5,000 years old and the Bible is literal and there was a
maybe
flood?
Not that weak, maybe not as weak as ignoring geology or something like that. That's strange, but I think it's fairly weak. Like you can read all sorts of things on this on both sides, but I've read Abigail Shrier pretty extensively, who does a really great job of making the argument that a lot of this is probably a social contagion, which I don't know if you've ever read her book. It's like Irreversible Damage. It's a really great book. I don't know if you, and she wrote a new book about therapy that I have not read yet, or you can read Jesse Singal and others that have gotten into this. And what I think is that, so my comparison to some of the science is like, I'll use this as in a comparison. When people used to explain NFTs to me, like no matter how deeply you explain them to me, right? Like no matter how deeply you explain them, I would be like, that doesn't make any sense. But like you can explain it for an hour, 2 hours. I'm like, but it doesn't make any sense. Like what you're saying is just not logical at all. And I feel that way about like when people say puberty blockers are reversible. It's like, that can't possibly be. Like no matter like what you say, we all know inherently that can't be true. Or like it's a good idea to.
It doesn't matter. Keep going.
Well, no, go ahead if you have.
Well, reversible. What does that mean? All it does is put a pause on the changes in the body until you get off them. But
yeah, but you don't think that like stopping, like that's not that is doing. It's just not reversible. It's not, you'll maybe fall back into some sort of pattern, but your body has been massively disrupted from a really important cycle that it goes through.
But it beats suicide.
Yeah. Yes, it does. But I think that there's a lot of, evidence coming out of, and I'm not an expert on this, you would know more about it than me, but with like Tavistock and things in the UK and like out of Western Europe, that like there might not even be a difference in long-term suicidality with like surgical treatment on trans people. In fact, you can read plenty of an increasing amount of literature about how much people regret it. And this is kind of getting
go ahead, continue. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say is like, this is kind of getting into the weeds because it's like, I don't really care about like what people do. Like, again, it's not me. There are people out there that want to say like, I don't want this to happen. Yeah. And to me, I'm like, I don't really care what you do to yourself. Like it's not really my choice or my business even but it does become my business when it's like, okay, like I have a hypothetical daughter on a hypothetical girls basketball team and there's a boy on it that is identifying as a girl. It's like these things are happening. There was just
I know, but forget the sports because that can get solved. Separate thing. Let's do because all right. So sports aside, how is it affecting you?
Okay, so another great example is like the entire idea of like dating trans people, and this kind of gets into, I think, the essence of why I wonder if you understand this, like, and I think you probably think about this, Jaffe, is like, most of this acceptance about like what is going on, like the deep madness, what I would consider with gender on a societal basis is adopted out of fear. Most people don't believe this stuff. Like, even if they say they do, they don't. And I think that a lot of
believe what though?
Believe in the essence of, I think most people believe that you're born the sex that you are. Okay. And that there are certain norms that are relatively constant with those, that there is a spectrum where that crosses over. Maybe that develops into like some, homosexuality, whatever, like things I don't care about, like being gay or being very, like I used to wear fucking eye makeup sometimes. I used to paint my nails, like I did a lot of things like that. I have earrings in both my ears and I have had them for 20 something years. So it's not like I wasn't playing around with being more feminine or doing something like that, but it never even was a concept to me that you can break that because it's time immemorial. It's the way it is biological reality. And so we bend society towards things all the time. And I don't mind now this is me speaking. I meet a person, they're whatever, 16 or 20 or 25, whatever age they are. And they're like, and mostly by looking at them, they were born this or they were born that, but they present as this and they want to be called this and this is their pronoun. It's like, okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I don't care about that. That's not my issue at all. It's simply when it comes to bear on other pieces of reality. So I think what I was saying before is dating is a really good example of this. Straight men will not, if you date a trans person, like a trans woman as a straight man, I don't know that I would argue that was gay, and that most straight men, if not basically all straight men,
do they know it's a trans woman?
I don't know that matters. And first of all, by the time it gets sexual, if you don't know by the time you have your clothes off, then you've never seen a woman naked in your life, So like, and I mean that, like,
are you assuming though that the trans woman no longer has a penis? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. No, I like totally surgically. Let's assume that the woman is totally female, the man who wants to be a woman is totally female presenting in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Men intuitively know, in my opinion, and talking to many men and just read, is like, that's a bridge too far, because even if they tell you, oh yeah, trans women are women, not when you want to fuck them, not when it comes to dating them, you don't believe that, not when it becomes starting a family, not when it becomes presenting them to your family, not when it becomes it's like, then it's trans women aren't women, right? And it's like, to me, I just feel like the base, that's what I'm talking about, is as long as we can live in a reality where we all understand those things are true and that it's not offensive or transphobic to say those obvious things about gender reality, then have at it. I don't care.
Okay, the bigger question then is, like I said, I don't think most people would disagree with you. I wouldn't even disagree with some of what you're saying. I do think there would be some real challenges if you are a trans woman and you're out dating and you're not letting people know, because I do think just where we are in society and maybe where we always will be, that there is something a little disturbing about not knowing if it bothers you, right? And there was a point maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when there was Nicole Maines was on the show Supergirl with my girlfriend is on that, Melissa Benoist. She doesn't know it, but she'll know one day. But she's the first trans superhero, and she's a trans woman playing the character. And I remember going, she's really fucking hot. She's really fucking hot. And somebody said, well, would you have sex with her? Like it was an option. And yeah, sure. Let me pencil her in for Tuesday. I said, the fact that I know she's trans makes that hard for me to get my head around. It seems like I would have a problem with that just at a performance level. And some people were saying, oh, well, that's transphobic. And I'm like, I don't mean it to be. It's just it's just
not like transphobic. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Jaffe. It's about
and over time, I've never seen what a vagina looks like that was once a penis. So it may be something that I just couldn't get past even today. But if you were to tell me Sydney Sweeney was once a man, I'd be like, but she looks the way she looks. I'm like, I don't give a shit what she was. Right. But that's not where I was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. But the bigger thing, though, is when you say, I get the sense there's this, and maybe there is, but when I talk to a lot of conservative folks, and I know you're not as conservative as a lot of people think you are, but there's almost this sense of like, stop telling me what to do. Like there seems to be this consistent fear or annoyance that people feel that people are always telling them what to do. And I'm wondering how much of that is real, because some conservative views, as happens, get pushed out because they're too old fashioned. But sometimes it's almost like, is it a victim mentality? It's like, who's really going around telling people some of the things that it sounds like you think are happening out there in the world?
I just can't believe, like, I feel like we live on different planets. Like, all you have to do is read the news and see.
Yeah, but you're saying you've never experienced it.
Dude, I am a fucking video game. I own my own business, and I live in my own house. I am married. I am I'm also almost 40 years old, so I'm not out there out and about. I feel like it's kind of unfair to say, because I've not experienced it. Like I've not experienced the bulge, but I read a book about it. I mean, like, so I know what happened.
I understand. Okay. That's somewhat fair, but it's also, you have to acquiesce to the idea that we live in a media culture that, not to be tropey and cliche, but if it leads, it bleeds, right? Or if it bleeds, it leads. And so do we really think that just because we're seeing something go viral, like the woman in GameStop going, it's ma'am, it's ma'am, it's ma'am.
Oh, man. I kind of felt bad. I kind of felt bad for that person, to be honest. I didn't even really find it funny.
No, I felt terrible for her. But the bigger point, though, is that it's like, you have to agree that there is sort of a perception of reality that gets massaged and amplified by the media itself at a level of making money. So you have to agree that the perception of reality is skewed to some degree, correct?
Yes, totally. I mean, I don't believe anything the powers that be, like governmental powers or corporate powers, say at all. But all you need to do is read leaked, presentations from major American corporations. All you need to go is look at PTA meetings and school board meetings all around the country, or like, there's just too many primary sources at our fingertips on the internet to pretend that these things don't happen. And this is what I'm saying, is that the acceptance of a lot of this has come at the barrel of a gun. And you were talking about like Christians.
Yeah, let's go back to that for the moment, because I mean, but yes, keep going, because I think your point, though, is a good point, which is like, could I be guilty of the same thing? It's just on a different. I mean, it's a great thing to think about, and you might be right, but I guess the difference is, and maybe there is no difference the way you see it, and that's important for me to hear. But I look at the religious stuff, and I see, I know there's value, right? But I look at it, and this is going to sound arrogant, and that's okay, because I'm open-minded. I can learn. I can be wrong. I am an agnostic. I am not an atheist. I don't believe in Judeo-Christian Islamic God or anything like that. But I definitely am like, if somebody were to go, there may very well, Jaffe, hey, we have proof of a creator, or we have proof of a programmer, or an alien species that put their DNA all over who the fuck knows? I'd go, okay. And there may even be a conscious deity out there that said, I have decided to create this thing called life. That's possible too. I don't know. But the specific religions, where people are making claims, I feel it's like a kid with a security blanket, right? It's like, because I know the value religion gives a lot of people. There's psychological healing that comes from it. There are coping mechanisms that come from it. Just some of the awful tragedies in life that happen. I understand even at a physiological level that religion can help people through that, where other things, like there's no pill other than just knocking yourself out for if you, God forbid, lose a child, right? But religion will probably bring you a little bit of comfort if you believe in it, because you're like, well, I can see that kid again one day, right? You at least believe that to some extent. But that works if fundamentally though, it seems that we do more harm where grown adults are not allowed. Of course they should be allowed, but are not taken to task for being grown adults with security blankets and going, yes, I know we don't know what's happening and it's chaotic and it's scary. But we're perpetuating these ideas that we fundamentally know. And I don't mean like, I think the trans thing has a bit or a lot more actual scientific method support than something like there being a God that exists. And I
don't think there's any scientific evidence for there being a God, other than maybe like why the universe. There's a whole theory that the universe is crafted in such a way as to allow life in every specific way. Like all of the numbers are just right.
But that doesn't even there's none of that even works though.
Well, I agree. Just because the argument against that is that, well, we wouldn't know either way until the universe existed in that sense, so it doesn't really prove anything. We're just aware.
The universe is so big, people go, well, the Earth is exactly this temperature from the distance from the sun for this temperature and this rotation. It's like, yeah, but the universe is so massive that our brains can't comprehend how massive it is. So this could be everywhere. We don't know how rare it is. So I guess for me, when I was pushing back at this woman, and forget the whole cultural black thing that people educated me on, but just the idea of you winning an award and saying God is good, I found it a reflection of a continual unhealthy, toxic mindset that I think if we could sort of continue to push out of our daily lives, I think we would be better off. I think we would be kinder. I think we would do more interesting experiments that would make humanity healthier and progress further. I'm not an idiot. I don't think that most of the wars that are fought in the name of religion are actually about religion. Religion's used to motivate the people to fight them from the powers that be that just want land and money and all that shit. I get that, but it's still a motivating factor to get people to kill people.
I think religion's a major motivating factor to fight and kill on one side in the current global conflicts, but it's not the Judeo-Christian side.
Sure, but do you even think the radical Islam leaders, do you think most of them do you think they're using that as a tactic, or do you think they literally are, also drinking the Kool-Aid?
I think it depends on who you're talking about. Like I think Hamas, for instance, are not like at the top are not religious.
Okay.
I think the Iranian leadership is clearly religious and even apocalyptic. But it's interesting because even if we're aiming at, I just don't, you said like that there's a certain toxicity in it. And I'm like, I just don't see that. I think I'm not a religious person. I grew up Catholic and my family's pretty deeply Catholic. My parents are both deeply Catholic, church-going Catholics.
Yeah.
And I went to Catholic school and all sorts of things like that. But I don't believe in it. I wasn't confirmed. And the joke is always that my dad told me that I can't go to heaven because I wasn't confirmed. I'm going to go to purgatory, which is like a big joke in my family.
Right. I thought that was kind of funny.
What'd you say?
I thought kind of funny was purgatory. I thought.
I'm
kidding.
Yeah.
That's kind of
and
funny.
You always have to like get me in trouble with that. Like the only time I ever talk about kind of funny is like when you ask me about
I know, because everybody wants to know. You know that, right? Everybody is fascinated by that story. It's a good story. Like one day they'll make a movie about it. It's a universal heartbreaking story. I'm not even fucking with you, man. It really is. I don't think you'll ever escape that narrative because the success that you've built out of it and the heartbreak of the friendship that was kind of splintered or damaged, or at least hopefully temporarily damaged only, that's drama.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't hear my haters kind of just stopped using the coattails analogy after Last Stand, doubled in size and then tripled in size.
Oh
and all
God, yeah, no. But
which was
I'll stop bringing it up if it bothers you.
it really doesn't. I don't care, Jeff. You could say whatever you want.
So, but yeah, so the religion thing though, it when you say, I say it's toxic in the sense that, let's talk about your parents. Your dad literally believes in the Catholic teachings, or he just enjoys the tradition of Catholicism.
Yeah, he believes. I mean, I don't know. There's a certain cafeteria Catholicism that I think prevails in mainstream Catholicism, and I think that even he would fall prey to that. Certainly, my mom would fall prey to that. But I think generally speaking, like my dad's like is like one of the guys that gives you the, what do they call them? I can't remember the. I'm sorry. Yeah, like they give you, but like I'm trying to think of the name of the person. Like they gives you the wafer, the wine or whatever.
Okay.
And
with the lantern that spins around.
Yeah, like all the smoke and all. And so yeah, he believes in a lot of that stuff, and I think that that's totally fine because, and maybe this is what we're getting into, is that my experience with Catholicism, though it is very fire and brimstone and is the original strand of existing Christianity, and there would be no Christianity without Catholicism. I think a lot of people don't think that through at all. Everyone that was Christian was Catholic until the 1400s, unless you talk about
the Catholic Church is the church that said let's make the Bible, right? I mean that.
Jesus is, well, if you believe in St. Peter and as the first pope and all that kind of stuff, but unless you're like believing Lollardy or a lot of the Gnostic stuff from 200, 300s, 400s that led to like the Constantinople and all of these different conferences that would make the rules for Christianity or whatever. So I personally have a lot of respect for Catholicism as a cultural force, because it is arguably the most important cultural force that's ever existed in humankind. And I think that it has, because of the Reformation, because Protestantism, a lot of Protestantism I think is crazy, but the old school Protestant religions forced Catholicism to come to terms with a lot of shitty things that it was doing. So a lot of it still happens. But remember, people were like paying off the church for indulgences and you can kind of still do that stuff actually, but nonetheless, I just feel like
your dad though believes literally in he will die and there will be a place called heaven where assuming he's played the cards right, he will be hanging out with Jesus and God and all the other folks in his life that were good that died and went to heaven. Like there's a literal belief there about all this.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that's where I get stuck, right? That's where I get confused.
Me too.
Because it sounds like your dad is very smart. My father-in-law is, I don't think he's Catholic. I don't know what he is, but my ex-father-in-law, but he's a scientist, and he also remains a devout Christian. And my mind is open to the fact that, Jaffe, you are simply missing a part of, and I don't mean this, I'm not making a joke, but like you're missing something in your physiology of your brain that makes it so you can't see what we see. But when I hear people talk about faith or belief versus knowledge, I go, in any other situation, what you're suggesting, I mean, forget all the ways that you can disprove or that it makes almost no sense mathematically that Christianity or Judaism or Islam or Buddhism or whatever is the actual real true religion, because it's really ridiculous. It depends on when you were born, where you were born, how you were raised. It has nothing to do. You just must have gotten real lucky. But there's just zero evidence of this stuff, and it's laughable if it hadn't been so protected and enshrined in the institution called religion. Like if somebody, it's not clever or wise to say if somebody were to say this stuff and they didn't have religion, they'd think you were out of your fucking mind. And so I cannot square that. And I cannot square that, especially when those folks are using religion, whichever religion you want to pick, to say, this is how we should make policy, or this is how, we should decide about personal choices like abortion or whatever. I explain that to me how it's not toxic, I guess.
I just, maybe from like a broad religious, like like Zoroastrians and fucking Shinto and all that kind of stuff, there is a certain evangelism and belief that seeps in to your life. I would argue that Enlightenment thinking or Enlightenment era thinkers, including our own, like Jefferson and Madison, did a really nice job of inoculating greater society and the government from religious influence. When they made when Thomas Jefferson was talking about religious freedom in Virginia, which was a big thing for him, he wasn't talking about Islam or even Judaism. They were talking about Protestant religions and Catholicism, but it obviously should include and does include everything. And there is no explicit separation of church and state, but it is implied. And we today we don't have a Christian theocracy or something like that in the United States, or a Christian Judeo theocracy, or even really that much of an influence. But the Enlightenment itself is predicated on Christianity, and in the Enlightenment, things that we believe, like freedoms of speech and that you're born an individual and that you have you have rights as an individual and all those kinds of things, are bred out of the Christian theological tradition. And so I think that, like, as part of human life in America, we kind of have a little bit of that element, but we isolate it, just like we don't have English as the official language, even though many of us speak it. So, or most of us do, and all of us should speak it. So it's like, I don't think that there's a disconnect between the way government deals with religion, as long as it doesn't infringe on your own ability to live a life as free as you want. And I don't think Judeo-Christianity in modernity does that anywhere. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel like it's kind of a misdirection, because it's like, so who cares? You know, like,
okay, all right, fine. So
believing in God is quaint. Going to church is quaint at this point.
I don't know if I totally agree that it's not as influential as you, but that's fine. Regardless, maybe the real crux of it, let's get to the very essence of it, which is, to me, regardless of how it affects the government, I don't understand, Colin. Psychoanalyze me, because maybe it's a me problem. I don't understand how in the fuck grown adults in 2024 are going to bat for things that are so batshit crazy. That's just the goddamn truth. And people say, well, you got to have faith or you got to believe. Why? To what end? That's like, I mean, you could say that about anything.
Yeah.
Don't you look at people who believe this shit and go, dude, you may be really, really fucking smart and you may be a great person and that's wonderful, but you believe in Harry Potter levels of D&D sword and sorcery fantasy. And not only that, but you've got history to show you that other cultures believe in totally different things that we look at now, like Zeus, you know, or Ra, the sun god. And we go, oh, can you believe that? That's ridiculous that they would actually think that was literal. I mean, how do you square that? I think it's madness.
I have a hard time squaring it. That's why I don't believe it. That's why I literally I couldn't go to Catholic school after a certain point because I wasn't confirmed. I refused to be confirmed.
No, but how do you square respecting intellectually other people that are able to keep that in their brain?
I guess I didn't explain it very well, but I guess what I'm saying is that the predicate of our society is largely based on Christian theological thinkers like Aquinas and More and all of these different people. So it's not that hard for me to believe that even if a person believes something, like Isaac Newton believed in all sorts of weird metallurgical shit, sure, you know, and believed in, you know, God, and believed you can prove it and all those kinds of things, but he still founded calculus. He still did all these different things. So it's not
knowledge and the tools they had. But if he existed today, he probably wouldn't believe in all those things because he would use the method and go, that's not true.
Maybe or maybe not. But I'm just saying that, like, I guess what I'm saying is that it's so materially obvious that brilliant people believed in something that I think is kind of crazy, and yet still were exceptionally more smart than me. So I don't look at it as an intellectual deficit to say that people believe in this thing. You know, like I don't think it's true. But first of all, I want to believe it's true. I just can't. I just don't believe it.
It'd be great. What do you want to believe about it that's true?
I think it's very little r romantic to think that when you die, you meet up with astral projections of everyone. I mean, I have no idea how it would work, really.
Oh, I would love that. Yeah.
But like where like it's like you get this you live in paradise and everything's great, and it's like that would be believing in an afterlife and believing in like finding that. But you and I have talked about this in the past. Like, I'm not sure how that works, because so like I'm in 55 other people's heavens, and like, what is my responsibility to those heavens? Are those like astral projections? I mean, these are the kinds of questions I used to ask. You have to understand, I was in like the fucking principal's office, who was a nun, saying these kinds of things, being like, I don't understand. The more they forced me to read the Bible in school, which we read extensively, the more I was like, wait a minute, but what about this, and this? So you're not going to find any argument with me that it's not real. Like, I don't think it's real either, but on a cultural level, I think it's fine. And there are just too many smart people that believe in an afterlife that I know that are religious. You were talking about my own personal experience, right? Like, well, my own personal experience is surrounded by Catholics growing up that were incredibly smart, well-read, scientifically literate, historically literate, politically interesting. You know, Long Island's a strange place. Some people say it's the South of New York or whatever, but to me, I just, you look at it as like and this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how you asked a long time ago, like, how do I take my father seriously at some level intellectually if he really believes those things? And it's like, because Thomas More believed it. It's like why would why would I not think that like some random, Isaac Newton believed that, Thomas Jefferson believed that. It's like, who cares?
Before we knew anything, we didn't have what we have now scientifically. I mean, they weren't. You make them sound like they were these guys who were incredibly wise beyond their time, outside of their areas of expertise. He believed things because, they didn't have the telescopes at the time, or they certainly didn't have James Webb at the time, or they didn't know about DNA, or they didn't know that there were planets outside of our solar system at the time. I mean, there was such a deficiency of data that you can forgive people from back then for believing certain things without ascribing to them some kind of wisdom because they believed it.
When is the line? Where is the line in history where it's no longer acceptable then to believe in that stuff? Because you were saying you can go back in time and say like, well, we don't. So like, when was the knowledge sufficient to make everyone feel stupid? Was it like quantum physics, or not quantum physics, but molecular physics or whatever, or splitting the atom?
Yeah, I wonder if everybody's getting you. Are you getting your mic cutting out or no? I'm here. I can understand you. I just want to make sure.
I don't.
Let me see if you guys are seeing that in the chat. Or you guys, let me know if.
No, I'm not hearing anything on my end.
Okay, cool. So where's the line? The line to me would be like where we are right now. Here's what I think everybody should be. And I'm arrogant enough to tell you that I think I know what everyone should be thinking. I think the only logical, rational position today is agnosticism. I think we don't have enough data to prove anything. Maybe there was a creator, but it pretty much probably almost within 100% accuracy was not anything that we have written about, whether you're talking modern religion or caveman religion or anywhere in between. There's just no evidence of any of that. The only thing you could potentially argue is there's a similarity between religion stories and creation stories. And perhaps someday, somewhere, we'll find something in the physiology of the brain to suggest that there is kind of a ability to key in on some kind of spiritual experience. But and I go, oh, okay, I could see that. But we don't have that evidence yet. So I think the line would probably be 19, probably when we first got so it was like 1990. When did we saw our first planets outside the solar system?
Oh, that was like in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the 90s, if you're still running around believing the specificity of a certain religion, I think it's cause for concern.
You feel this way about Islam too, obviously.
Yeah, I feel anybody that claims to know anything.
But what about like that? It's so interesting to me because it seems like, I don't know. Christianity seems to be a pretty easy punching bag, which I think shows where the levers of power truly are in many places in modern American society. And I would argue that in many ways, because I agree with you, I'm agnostic too. Mm-hmm. I would consider myself even maybe deist, where it's like, I could totally believe, and maybe even do believe, that there is some sort of rule set. I don't know if it's an omnipotent, omniscient, whatever. Right. I have no idea if it knows we're here. But it's believable that there's like some rule set. Like, why are all the value? Like, why is electromagnetism this value? I was reading something recently, like where if you removed like the molecular the attractive power, I guess, of certain molecules by 5% or something. Like nothing would fuse the right way and everything would be off. It's fascinating to think about like why those values are what they are and how they all kind of arrived in this place. And I think the older I get and the more I read and the more I watch things, it's like the more I realize that I have no idea that I think we're actually maybe not thousands of years, but hundreds of years away from having the requisite knowledge to be able to make a confident proclamation one way or the other. I just think I don't look at it as like I said, as an intellectual deficiency. I think there is a level of delusion to faith. And I do think faith kind of gets out of that by saying like, well, it's faith. You know, I've long said, and this is another thing I said in Catholic school that they didn't like very much, which was I was like, wouldn't it be really effective if like God, the Father, just appeared unequivocally one time?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that solve everything? Like, why wouldn't you want that? And they would have all these different arguments. I used to also argue that like Christianity is inherently polytheistic. The God, the Father, God, the Son, God, the Ghost. It doesn't really make any sense. These are all the questions. So it's like, I'm not really believing in that either, but I don't really disrespect the belief. I kind of hope they're right. And I've long said that I refuse to believe that a God, like just a God that, and let's say like the Catholic procession of going to St. Peter and going to the gates and kind of getting your rundown and all of that. I go to St. Peter as an agnostic who was culturally Catholic, but that's irrelevant, made a lot of anti-God jokes, made a lot of religion jokes and all sorts of shit over his time, and was not welcome in Catholic school after a while and didn't get confirmed and all of that. But I go to St. Peter and I'm like, did I really not live a life that doesn't belong here? Like I could be like a murderer and just say like, oh, I'm saved. And that guy gets in, but I don't, because I didn't believe that. I refuse to believe in a God so vain
and petty.
So, like, so to me,
what a horrible piece of shit he would be if that was the case. I mean, that's
crazy to me. It's crazy to think that. You know,
but your dad, and I'm not picking on your dad, but your dad is a very smart guy. That's not, I wouldn't pick on your dad, but I'm just saying that he's the character that we're talking about. And that's how I see him in this conversation. But your dad, as smart as he is, he believes that if you aren't saved, you're not going to be up there. You'll be in purgatory, but he could be hanging out with Ted Bundy because before he hit the chair, he said, I believe in Jesus.
I think so. I think that's what they believe. Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense, Colin.
I agree.
So when I think about a person like that, I go, they can be a great friend. I can love them. I can support them. I can learn from them because they're probably smarter than me in a million ways. But on this particular topic, I think they are living in a delusion that is the height of ignorance. But you don't see your father that way. So when you think of him...
No, because I hope he's right.
But he's not.
Here's another thing about
how
God.
Can he be right? It's a ridiculous... how is he right? Unless he's got the astral projection thing. He's got that figured out.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because I want it to be right for humanity. Like, I want it to be right. Like, I want to believe that there is some insane payoff.
Oh, no, that's
end.
different.
It's not like believing...
you're talking I'm talking you were talking about the Catholic belief.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Catholicism,
you want humanity,
you want
that to be right? Where you got this petty God who says you can't come in, Colin, because you didn't believe?
Yeah,
that's what you just said.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I don't, that's part of the fire and brimstone kind of, I refuse to believe that is what God is. That's why I think part of what, I'm sorry, I'm packing my bowl. That's why I'm looking down. That's part of why
Are we smoking? See, the problem with you and smoking is you never get high.
Yeah, well, that's because I've been high for 25 years. So,
see, I haven't smoked. Look at what this stream is sponsored by Gelato. It's really not, but I wish they'd pay me because I'd fucking sell the shit out of this stuff. Anyway, keep going, Colin.
So yeah, I was just saying, like, I totally get the nuance of saying like, well, this is the reality you want, and this is like, yeah, that's fair. But I feel like that reality would be better than nothing, which is what I think happens. And that's a really, see, it's not like someone believing something frivolous that has like an ill bearing or like anything. And I also, since I believe in this God that refuses to be so petty, I also believe that he would understand Pascal's wager well enough to understand that like I don't want to participate in that, because he would know. It's almost better to say like I'm not going to insult you like that, you know? And then hopefully when he's
but again, even Pascal's wager goes back to like, it's like you're willing to throw away your brilliant mind because you're afraid of what could be. What a coward. Not you, but I mean the people who use Pascal's wager. It's like if I'm God, I'm like, what a terrible person to let in. The only reason you're here is because you were afraid. It's like being surrounded by a bunch of yes men at work. That's basically what the religious version of heaven must be like.
That's
at least with Islam, you get some virgins. I don't even know if that's I don't think you get that with anyone else.
Yeah, I think this is what I found so attractive about, and I don't really find any Protestant religions truly attractive in a major way, but is like Calvinism to me was always so attractive because at least it took choice out of it, where if you were having these sorts of thoughts about the reality of what you believe or whatever, at least it felt like it was destined to happen anyway, and that like you were supposed to be in that space, as opposed to struggling actively and thinking that you kind of have to come to your choice on your own from your own free will, which is something I believe. And I don't find the vision of like a Judeo-Christian heaven unattractive. I just don't really understand how it could be. But I also think that the more we learn, the more we look into deep space, the more we learn about time and the functions of the way physics breaks down beyond event horizons and all sorts of, it's like, yeah, we don't understand fucking anything. I think you and I said on a recent show, I'm like, I'm pretty sure we understand about 5% of reality. Like, and meaning we understand how wind currents work and gravitational law and all. We don't understand dick. And so it's really not unbelievable to me to think that somewhere in those weeds is the shit we're talking about. Maybe.
Oh, maybe, yeah. But do you think we would get to an understanding faster if we were comfortable calling bullshit and going, because here's what we don't know, and here's what we do know. We know, you know what's weird? We know people have had a desire to believe in God since the beginning. It's probably an evolutionary thing, but let's spend some money and some time figuring out, is there a spiritual aspect to DNA? You know, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but let's not make that a blasphemous thing to discover. To you know, let's look at the frequency of similarities between people who have DMT trips and go, is that just sort of culturally because we've been told we're supposed to see machine elves? Or if you went to someone, you know, it's never heard of this shit, would they see the same shit? Right? That's an interesting study. It's like we all have this, you know, let's look at the release, the possible release of DMT at the moment of death in the brain. People say that's not true. People say it is true. Let's find out for certain. You know, there's a number of things that if we would just sort of go, let's all be agnostic, fellas. Let's actually try to make that 5%, 10%. I think we'd be a lot better off. Do you agree? If we, you know, if you could snap your fingers like Thanos and say, tomorrow morning, we all wake up going, I don't know, but I'm curious. Would that be better than waking up tomorrow and going, religion as we have it today?
Yeah, definitely. It would stop most of the conflict in the world, especially in the Middle East. And we would have a reasonable human curiosity about answers, whatever they are. You know,
right.
That was what was so cool about, I don't know if you read Carl Sagan's Contact or saw the movie.
I love the movie.
It's so good because it gets into the nitty gritty, like McConaughey's character about the nature of what we are learning and what we're meant to know and all these kinds of things. I like the idea of humanity. Humanity is smart enough to overcome all of these different things. We can harness the power of stars now, right? And it's going to move quick with atomic, you know, with fusion and fission. And,
right. I thought you meant like a sphere around the sun.
Oh no, like a Dyson sphere or whatever. No,
yeah,
that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I loved that thing that was they found some planet, or they found some star with an exoplanet, and it was like getting shaded out in weird ways. The stars they looked at it and they thought that maybe it had a Dyson sphere around it, which I was like, that's so wild.
Yeah.
And we'll never know. But so I believe that there's this idea that humanity is just naturally where we are now, like, you know, in this place, and this is our intelligence and all that, but it happened pretty rapidly, and we should keep going. You know, even if you're like a Graham Hancock guy and you believe that civilization's like 10 or 15,000 years old, it's still incredibly young. But let's say you believe in like mainstream archaeology and anthropology, and it's like 5,000 to 6,000 years old or whatever. Like, holy shit, dude. We went from like not being literate, not having a writing system, not having a math system, not understanding anything about the stars except for like the precession of them and how nature works. And we didn't understand farming and animal husbandry and all the shit. And now we're here on a computer talking to each other. Like, these things are unthinkable.
Yeah.
And I think we need to continue to put our shoulder into it and find those answers. So I absolutely want us to get to a reality where religion isn't the dominant force in choice making and decision making. And I think we're in that place in the West. So I don't really look at that as like we are a more secular society than ever. I get more worried about like what we're going to try to compete with and like what we want to be. We're never going to be the best seculars or the best atheists. That's the communists, right? We're never going to be the biggest like religious zealots or the religious believers or whatever. That's really like the Islamic world, right? We have to find our own place of what I would think would be human naturalism. So yeah, discovering those answers once and for all, proving it. Really, I believe these things are knowable. I just don't know how. It's very similar to saying like, how are you going to 200 years ago, when they were writing the earliest, like what we would know as look at as science fiction of going to the moon and meeting the people there or whatever. They had no fucking idea how you actually got there or even began to thought about like what a rocket is and all of these things. We have to figure out ways to solve these unknowable problems. So I'm with you 100%. I believe I feel this way. I believe in a deep human mysticism that like we can discover like the real answers of the universe, just like any other probably sentient civilization that doesn't destroy itself, and so I'm all about that.
Right. I mean, they did it in Starfield. If they can do it in Starfield, do it anywhere.
I'll play it when it comes to PlayStation.
Won't be long. Okay, would you be up for taking some chat and calls?
Yeah, sure, man. Whatever you
all
do.
Right, fellas, listen, do your best to stick to the, it's Colin. He's very
can I say something real quick, by the way, Jaffe? I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean for it to get so into the trans issue. I was just using that as an example of.
I think it's a great point. I don't agree with you that. I think you pointing out that your perception of my view of the trans situation as a ally, I would never want to speak for a trans person, but from what I've gleaned from raising one and knowing a number of them. That you point out that you feel that is as dogmatic, I think is astute. I think it's a good point. I don't agree, but I go, yeah, no, I know why you would have brought it up. Absolutely.
I just didn't mean to. I don't want it to be about your family.
No. It's that I look, man. I have.
I love you. Like I don't want it to be like.
I love you too, Colin. But unfortunately, the gays.
I know.
We can't be the gays.
At least try to present as a woman.
I know it's not working. I know you're trying for me. I know you try to look nice for me, but it's not working. I mean, you look nice, but just not for. It doesn't matter, Colin. The point is, I appreciate it, but no, all good.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, fellas, listen. If you want to talk to good Sir Colin and me about ideally this topic, obviously Colin from all kinds of things. So I'm sure you'll, ask whatever you want to ask, but be nice and be interesting. And I'm not going to, I got nothing. Here's the invite. I'm putting it up right now in the chat. So if you want to click on this link, you can come in with a camera, you can come in with just a microphone, or you can write it in the chat. Okay. By the way, Connor Steinbeck says this chat definitely going to be one of the most diverse today. I'm here for it. Thank you, buddy, for all that support. Jojo D says, I still think Mama Mika is glowing. And there is no doubt in my mind that both Colin and Micah will be great parents. I guess he's convinced you guys are pregnant.
Thank you.
Hello, Godfather, says Craig. Thank you, buddy, for that. I've been a member here for 24 months because of your referral. Oh, well, thank you, Craig. I appreciate that, buddy. Very, very kind. All right. So this guy says, I'm pissed the Islanders gave Philly a point last night. I don't know what that means. I think it's
it's just a playoff race kind of sitch.
Yeah. But there's your link if you want to ask anything about what Colin's talking about. We got Ember's Arcade. I'm going to bring Ember in. Okay. Ember, you are on with me and Colin. What's up, pal?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes. I can. Colin, can you? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, Colin, I'm a huge fan. I'm a supporter on Patreon. I love what you do at LSM. Thank you for all the content. And Jaffe, I've been listening to you for quite some time. I just wanted to, I guess there's nothing that I know that I can say to convince anyone otherwise. I am a devout Catholic. I So it's very interesting to hear people talk about religion and have the questions that they do that I had when I was 14 years old. But the one thing that I wanted to point to that maybe can be moved on is the idea of I think somebody being intellectually deficient or lesser than because of their faith. I don't have that feeling towards people who are non-believers. I understand. I was a non-believer for most of my adult life, and I would love to talk about how things changed for me and how I went from being a pretty staunch atheist to accepting the teachings of the church and pursuing confirmation and so on.
Yeah, atheist to Catholic is a very weird.
Yeah, without spending like a Game of Thrones series level of explanation, what was the change? And I'm going to start smoking pot, Colin. This will go off the rails.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the endurance as you do, sir, but I hope no one minds. All right, Ember, what caused the change?
So there were a few things. First, I started to understand more about the natural world. I think Colin has talked about this on this stream and in other episodes on different shows on sacred symbols about the sort of the idiosyncrasies of reality that seems so unbelievable and conducive to life. Just I mean, I know this is not going to be a satisfying answer to you, Jaffe, and even to you, Colin. I know it's just something that I as I continued to peer out into the nothingness of the void, and I saw the sort of infinite death that surrounds us, and yet here we are and we live. I was overwhelmed by this gratitude of life, and I seemed to connect that to God, and so that's when I started to pursue the church. But it's other things. I mean, the relationships that I've had. I got married, and I felt love that I'd never felt before, and before I would have thought that it was chemical reactions in my brain that explained why I had this deep connection to my wife and why I would die for her in a heartbeat. And I just felt like it had to be something more, that I can't just boil down this thing that I have, this experience, to a chemical reaction. And again, I know that's not satisfying. It's just sort of, I woke up one day and I'm like,
but what it begs for me is the question of, I'm not suggesting that those experiences, looking out into the void and feeling something about your wife, were not incredibly powerful, transformative experiences, but what wasn't in your mind that allowed you or told you that the answer to that or the reason for that was God versus just your brain? I mean, I can look out into the void and I can feel absolutely overwhelmed and awed and just like, oh my God, what is happening? But my brain doesn't go, oh, that must mean it's God. My brain goes, it's like a dog learning algebra, which is impossible. It's like you're asking me to comprehend something that is not comprehensible, but I know it's there. And in that, I'm trying to comprehend it. Of course, you're going to have that response. But to you, you said it was God. I'm curious why you think that is.
The difference is that I didn't interpret these emotions as within me. I think the difference between you and I is that I felt that they were beyond me, that everything that I felt would exist independently of me. And although I understand that it seems like, and it is a leap of faith, quite literally, to go from that to, well, it must be God, because there are so many other gods that have existed across history. And is it only because you were raised in a Latino household in the Southwest of the United States, and that's why you think that it's the Catholic Church? You would have believed differently if you were born in India or if you were born in Sri Lanka. I've heard all of those arguments.
If I could prove to you that it wasn't God, if I could say there may be a God, but what you experienced, I can press this button in your brain and you'll have the exact same experience, would you stop believing in God?
Absolutely. It would be the most heartbreaking thing in my life. But yeah, I mean, I'm not here to, if you could prove that somehow, then
yeah, but how would you know that God wasn't the one, that it's not a religious thing, that I don't want to say it's a religious thing, but that the outcome is not preordained by the biology to come to this certain thing because God is real? That wouldn't be compelling to me.
Right. Okay.
That gets into like determinism and stuff like that.
That's right.
So I don't know that would be very compelling to me, but I'm not Ember's arcade.
I think, I mean, just to work in the hypothetical, I think if you had something that said, oh yeah, everything that you believe is wrong, and I couldn't deny that. I mean, I think maybe even a part of me would want to hold on to my faith despite that. Even I would recognize that would be completely irrational. I suppose.
But you're Catholic right now, correct?
I am Catholic, yeah.
Okay, so what about what Colin said, where he said, you know, if Colin were to die tomorrow and he'd see St. Peter would say, hey, I like your podcast. I'm a Patreon member and everything, but you ain't getting in, bitch, because you didn't believe. But your dad's up here. I know Colin's dad's not dead, but your dad's up here hanging out with Ted Bundy. I mean, because basically that is a valid interpretation of certain religious beliefs, correct?
Right. It's very difficult because the foremost, I think, prerequisite for entering the kingdom of heaven or being close to God is the acceptance of Jesus Christ as your savior, and that's really it. It's redemption. It's repentance, and then redemption as a result of it. And so you would say, well, why would Ted Bundy be up in heaven? The entire idea, and it's a very hard idea to swallow, and I struggle with this too. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand this, but the idea is that everyone can be saved if they repent, and that's hard because Ted
What
Bundy
is
was
repenting? How do I repent? What do I do?
You repent of your sins. You truly repent of the things.
What does that mean? I go into a church and I say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." It's been infinity since my last confession.
Well, yeah. Okay, so let me explain to you the mechanism of how at least the Catholic Church operates. Right? Is that it's a weekly thing. It's kind of like a podcast. I suppose.
No, I know. I got it. I got it. But I'm just saying that if I were to repent, I could do that.
Yeah.
Would God know if it was a genuine repentance?
Yes.
So Ted Bundy,
and that's the
Ted
thing.
Bundy,
It's
Ted Bundy
not
couldn't
as
do it
simple
the
as
last
like
second.
I killed 33 sex workers. My name is Ted Bundy. Oh, whoops, sorry. I'm so sorry, Jesus. I'm going to go to heaven. No, that's not it. Right? It's
Okay.
It's not that simple. It's not
So
just
what
saying
would
sorry.
Jesus say to Colin and me if he's like, you guys are really decent people, but you didn't believe in me fundamentally, and so you're not getting in?
Well, I can't speak for
Sure,
for
yeah, but
Jesus
you
Christ.
can speak to him more than I can.
You can too speak for Jesus Christ.
You are, yeah. You can
Well,
speak
I
for the
can
Christ.
tell you. Here's what I think is that. Well, here's what the church teaches at the very least is that we don't truly understand the total machinations of heaven, and that wouldn't be surprising to me if what we're trying to discuss here is we're trying to explain how a watch works to an ant. If it's like a two-dimensional creature trying to perceive something in the three-dimensional space, it's like maybe it's a thing that we just can't. And that's again dissatisfying answer. You need the faith and yada yada yada. I know.
Yeah, I just don't have. I don't have the faith. I don't have faith in anything.
I was an atheist for most of my life. I totally sympathize with how frustrating it is to hear that kind of thing. Because it requires that negative capability to be like, okay, well, I don't get it. I know I'll never get it. I have to accept that.
All right, members, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you for the call.
Oh, okay.
All right, man. All right,
wow, you were done.
Well, because I got it. There's other people waiting, and I don't want to. A lot of times people call and it's so conversational that it's totally like, fine. Oh, I'm a third co-host. It's like I got to move it.
No, I understand.
This is Joey H. Joey H. You were on with the Godfather of PlayStation podcast. Likes to call himself Colin. What's up, pal?
Hey there, guys. I'm a huge fan of you guys, especially you, Jaffe.
Yeah,
kind of nervous.
Oh, please.
I just wanted to say, like, you, the creator of God of War, like, got me super into, like, Greek mythology as a kid. And Colin, like, you got me really into video games as a kid. And I just want to, like, thank you guys so much for, like, all the work you've done over the years. I feel like I, like, grew up with you guys, like, over the past 10 years.
Those are nice things to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very kind.
Are you high?
I am on my break, and I did rip the dab pen before coming on here.
Right on, right on.
I am a little nervous.
What do you do for work? What are you on your break from?
So I actually work within, like, the card industry, like sports cards, like football, basketball.
But you're not like flying a plane or anything. I just want to be sure.
Oh, no.
Okay. So what? Any else? I appreciate the kind words. We both do. Anything specifically as it relates to the religion?
Not necessarily the religion. I really just wanted to circle back on like being like a conservative in this day and age. Like, it's very hard to like voice your opinion about anything. And I'm a Jewish guy, like not very religious or anything. So I relate to you, Jaffe. Like you said, you grew up as a Jewish kid. But I think like the problem a lot of like conservatives have with like the message is like, really it's all good if you're an adult, but if you're a kid, it's like it gets murky. And usually conservatives are like, it's okay as long as like you're not a kid, or you're coming for our kids is like the usual rhetoric you hear, kind of thing.
Nobody's coming for your goddamn kids. Trust me, it's hard enough to raise my own. Nobody gives a shit about your kids. But I appreciate it. All right, Joey, thanks for the kind words, buddy. Be well.
All right, you as well. Love you guys.
All right,
Bye, Joey.
Listen, Colin, I need some help here. I have a Kyle S waiting, and I have someone who goes by the name of, I'm not even going to say it. You see who's down there, right?
I don't know. Where would I even see it on our side?
It should be down below. It's not Greg Miller, but he's calling himself. Should I even take that call or no?
Whatever you want. I don't care.
I mean, I'm
It
curious.
doesn't matter. We like to have fun.
All right.
We do a little trolling.
All right, Greg Miller, what's up, pal? He's not even ready. Not even ready.
There he is.
Hello?
Yeah, what's up, Greg?
It's P Turtle.
Of course it's P Turtle. Go ahead, quickly, P Turtle.
Quickly, this is my chance to talk to Colin.
Yeah, so go.
What's up, Colin? Do you know who P Turtle is?
No.
You've never heard me speak to Jaffe before.
No.
Why? I've been calling in for 6 years. You've never watched his show?
P Turtle, go. Move
No,
on.
not usually. If he puts out clips or something, I talk to Jaffe on my own show. We're friends in real life.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Because I have like 8 things to ask you, but I'll ask you this one thing. Maybe I'll call back. Who knows? But
who knows?
Do you think it's weird that Jaffe only attacks Christianity? He never attacks the Jews. He never attacks the Muslims.
I attack
what do you
all
think that's
religions.
about? No, you don't. No, you don't.
All right, go
What
ahead.
do I give you an example? Give you an example of you not talking about Jews or Muslims?
I think Judaism is just as batshit crazy. If you want me to believe the Old Testament that the Red Sea was parted and God told Moses to kill a bunch of firstborn kids, yeah, I think it's batshit crazy. I don't know enough about Muslims.
So why do you only target Christianity though when you talk about these things? Why don't you ever talk about
the woman who went on stage was a Christian that kicked off the email that Colin sent to me.
All right, Colin, can I tell you this? Did you hear about the Jews in the walls?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You didn't hear about
this
New York City?
It's a New York thing.
I'm from New York myself.
Jews built the tunnels.
Like when they, I did hear about that. Yeah.
Okay. When I brought that up to Jaffe, he said, because, there was some stuff that it might have been some trafficking going on down there. They found some weird, what was it? The high chair they found. And he said, well, at least the Jews are smart enough to molest kids in the tunnels. The Catholics do it out in the open.
Well,
this is funny to you guys.
I was making a joke. But that said, though, I also made it very clear that if that particular group of people and it was a religious affiliation were Jewish and molesting kids, then they should have themselves thrown in fucking jail, too.
Okay, but listen, this will be the last thing I say. Remember the whole Activision thing with Bobby Kotick. He ended that whole rant about how white men need to do better because of all the stuff that white men are doing in the offices. Bobby Kotick is Jewish. That Mike Moraine or whatever the hell his name is guy is Jewish. Okay, these are Jewish guys, but it's the white Christians that are always getting the blame.
Are Jews not white?
They are white, but when you talk about, don't joke. You know for a fact.
Goodbye, Pete Turtle. Wait, no, goodbye. There he goes, off into the sunset, fellas.
Who is that?
He's Pete Turtle. Let me tell you something, Colin. He wants us all to know that the age of consent in New York City apparently is 17. So he's a 40-year-old man dating a 17-year-old girl, and he usually goes to pick her up during the show from high school. That's who we're talking about.
Dark.
He's dark. Well, he says he's not. He's out of his.
I mean, whatever. Mind. If that's their whole. Can we get into something he was saying though about that before we move on?
Yeah. Kyle, we'll get you in a second, buddy. Hang in the chat room. All right. Colin.
I did kind of bring that up earlier about he does. It's not. I don't know. I don't have the holistic view of everything you've ever said, but it does seem to me that I said it many times. Like Christians are just easy targets. There's way more nefarious shit going on with it, and that there's really nothing that Christianity is driving anywhere in like the top 25 worst things that are going on in the world right now. And I would say a good half of the worst things that are going on in the world are all being driven by Islam. So, or an interpretation of Islam. So
fair.
It's like it does bear repeating in some sense that it's like, yeah, we have to be multi-directional in some way, because I love beating up Christianity when it deserves it, and Catholicism as being my kind of home field. It's cool. But there are some major fucking problems with
Yeah,
a certain
look,
other
if
global
you
religion that I
showed
do
me
think
a
doesn't get brought up
chart
real.
of these 25 problems and you ascribe them to specific religions, I would have no problem going, hey, what do you know? Islam happened to be or like you said, interpretation of Islam happened to be way higher than Christianity. And I will cop to the fact that for me, in my home, because of seeing all of the anti-trans legislation that has happened over the country in the last 2 years, and most of that is driven by the kind of Christian nationalism that is kind of, I don't know if it's on the rise anymore, but certainly is part of that MAGA group. Certainly that has my attention more. So I would agree that it's quite possible that I amplify that distaste, but make no mistake, it's a blanket statement about all this stuff. I don't care what religion you are. I think we're all fundamentally agnostic, and the sooner we recognize it and build our culture around it, the better. That's my
That's fair. To me, it's like the biggest religious problems we have in the United States are like, should a cross be in front of a public building, or should, like the old 10 commandments in front of the courthouse kind of thing. Like, we really don't have big drag out fights where Christianity as a force blurs into polity.
We have a lot of legislation that is driven by religious folks in a desire to make America more like a Christian country.
Sure. Well, I think America is a Christian country in some sense.
Well,
I just think that,
not officially, not in any legal sense.
No, certainly not officially, but culturally. But
sure.
I think that it's a far cry from, like, we were making fun of the Queers for Palestine. Maybe they should bring those banners over to the West Bank and see what happens to them. If they went over there. And maybe you should try to go be gay in Saudi Arabia and watch your head get cut off in a public execution, or be trans in, certain African countries where they'll launch you in a fucking jail and forget you ever existed at all. So to me, it's
a pretty low bar that, at least you won't get your head cut off in America. If you want to,
you won't. I can say whatever I want about anything and there might be a crazy person, but the government and the secret police are not going to come and arrest me and throw me away. There are serious. They look at these countries look at women as less than human.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It is important to note that it is worth that's dark ages shit.
But
frankly,
same thing with the whole 10-cent thing, whether you're supporting the China stuff or you're supporting, all these companies. I get it. There's a lot of money to be made in Saudi Arabia, but I think it's ridiculous. I love that it was, I think the woman head chess player in the world just lost 2 ranks because she's like, I'm not going to play there. They want to, the way they treat women is ridiculous. And I think it's great. It's like, good for her. Fuck them.
Yeah, it's completely insane. And I think that the point is that religion guides all of that. That's all religious. And it's all Sharia.
Do you think the Saudi family, though, is religious, or it's just a way they keep power? Because I know it drives it at the human individual people level. But what about
I think the Saudis are rapidly changing, I think, as a result of internal pressures, because they know that it's not sustained. They can't both be Western exposed and that culturally backwards. And I think so it is a power play. I think they're probably religious, but I don't think it's probably religious like the United States is religious. Like Joe Biden's a Catholic. It's not like the Iranian, leadership, which are literal Islamists or whatever. So that's Trump, the whole point I'm making is there's a lot of that's why I think Christianity is just such an easy target, because it's there are really materially fucked up things happening in the world and they're not being driven by Christianity. I'm sorry. They're not.
No, I
not even close. If the biggest Christian thing we have to deal with in the United States is a push for abortion laws, which is not ideal. I think there should be, reasonable abortion laws, but it's if that's the biggest cultural thing that Christianity has done in the United States, then I think we've lucked out, because go to the other side of the ocean and see what the fuck's going on over there.
I don't know if I would agree with the impact in a negative way that they've had is not as great as you, or I think it's greater than you are suggesting, but I agree with you comparatively speaking. Fuck yeah, 100%. And I see your point, and I think it's a good one that P Turtle brought up. All right, believe that or not, that guy's fucking crazy. Kyle S. Talk good, sir. Colin Moriarty. What's up, buddy?
Kyle, I cut you off before.
No, you're good, man. I appreciate the conversation. First of all, I'm not going to blow smoke too far up your guys' ass. Just love the show, especially Defining Duke. My
Awesome.
favorite Xbox podcast.
What's going to
Thank you.
happen
I'm
when the
glad- I'm
Xbox
glad to
goes
hear
out of business? Who are you going to like then? What's going to happen then, Kyle?
Well, PC Master Race.
Fair enough. I understand.
And also, as a Greek, I gotta say, I know you hear it all the time, but I love God of War and great representation of the
Oh,
culture.
well, I appreciate that because I literally have some people, I don't know what you would call it, who send me pictures of my children's heads cut off being carried away by harpies because they think that I have offended the great Apollo religion or something. I mean, it's the craziest shit I've ever heard of in my fucking life.
That's ridiculous. I mean, I grew up around it, and I felt it was a great representation of how brutal the mythologies especially were.
And how cool they were. I appreciate you saying that, Kyle. Anyway, what do you want to talk about?
What I want to say is one of the things I've noticed as we become more irreligious as a country and a planet, just to put in perspective, I'm more in the atheist agnostic category.
Mhm.
It feels like people are replacing religion with almost identity politics or MAGA and things like that. And man, it makes me concerned for a lot of things. You guys think I'm off base here?
No,
and
you're absolutely right.
What do you think the fix for it is? Like, it seems like there is none.
Some people would say faith is the fix for that. I don't know if I really believe in that. I just believe that it's clear humans will believe in something. There are a whole new series of dogmas, sayings, like prayers, like it's all secular, but it's like a belief structure with fear and outcasts and excommunication and consequences. You're totally right, Kyle. I mean, 100%.
I had a roommate who was into when QAnon was a thing, and you'd start hearing it like in the hallways, and all of a sudden you hear, we go one, we go all. You're like, oh God, like that's just a prayer, like nonsense.
I agree with you, by the way, too, that it is like MAGA would constitute that for me as well. It's like, not that you can't like Trump or whatever. I just don't feel like the overzealousness. It's like it's just believing in something. You are going to believe in something. And I think the vacuum has been filled by all sorts of secular pseudoscience. Some of it's real science, maybe. I mean, global catastrophe is another of those religions. Like global warming, people like sitting on roads and throwing oil on paintings and cutting up paintings and doing all these kinds of disruptive things to bring attention to it. These are the acts of religious zealots. Like,
you
these
think
are the
you're
acts
really
of...
going to believe in something? I don't think I believe in anything.
Yes, you do. We've gone into the things you believe. You believe things?
Well, yeah, but you mean not about how the universe is, about what?
No, but I don't think that. But you believe about the way things operate, though.
Oh, okay, like free will and all that
stuff like that.
Right, exactly. Like we all just have the vacuum. You're not just going to go through life with no structure. So if you don't have the religious structure, which is fine. I mean, I don't really have the religious structure either. Then you're going to have something. I mean, and I do think that it's not a coincidence that like progressive American left-wing people are usually not religious, and they actually are the most deeply religious people in society. Like that's no coincidence. Yeah. Like their religion is insanely deep. It's deeper than anything I learned in Catholic school.
Right.
And so I think that's a product of, that's why communists are atheists, but are they really? They're like state worshipping.
Right.
You do something like Juche or whatever in North Korea, and it's like they're worshiping like a line of genealogy. It's like so weird, right? It doesn't make any sense at all. So people worship at whatever they can, and if it's not going to be God or a deity, it'll be government, Black Lives Matter, or like some, like whatever, or MAGA, or the government, QAnon. I totally agree with you, Kyle. I think you're spot on.
All right, Kyle. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you calling, man.
Thanks
all
for
right,
the show.
buddy. All right. Let me get some super chats real quick, and then we'll get some of these
okay,
callers.
Cool. I got to pee too. Can I just go pee real quick, or is that rude to do during the super chats?
Oh my God. Go pee, Colin. Jesus fucking Christ.
I'll be back in a second. Sorry, I drank like holding a protein through a straw like a woman.
Good.
And I'll be back in a second.
All right, let me get some of these that are not Colin related. Wait for that one. Jay Styles, thank you, buddy, for being a member again. I appreciate it very, very much. Very kind, very courteous, buddy. Thank you. Basement Radio Arcade Podcast. Good to see you guys. Jaffe, great to see Colin on. Great combo. I agree. It's always good to talk to Colin. I'll wait. Hey, this is Dave Goodrich. I'll wait for that one though, because it's about Colin. Darth Nugget wants us to know he's been a member for 34 months. Thank you, buddy. He says, creamy chicken flavor Maruchan ramen noodle soup is the breakfast of champions. That's all I have to say about that. Larry sucks. Fair enough. I agree. That's a Colin one. That's a Colin one. Mr. Jaffe, can we get P Turtle back on the line? He's a maverick. Thank you, Emmanuel. No, I do like calling and talking to P Turtle, but I can't place P Turtle on other people like Colin. I think it would just be, if Colin wants P Turtle back, he can ask him. He's always welcome on our show, but he can go on for a long time. You heard the man. He said he's got 8 things to talk about. Come on now. Okay, so here's Colin. Let me get the super chats that relate to good sir Colin. In our discussion, Richie Torres MMA says, Jaffe, if God exists and is the standard of what's moral, don't you think you'll be accountable to him? Who gives a shit is my answer. First off, I don't think he's the standard of what's moral if he exists at all. And if he is, it's kind of like Colin said, his morality would suggest that I need to believe in something I don't, or try to believe in something that my brain in 52 years has not believed in, or I will be in purgatory or worse. Fuck that guy. What a piece of shit. I mean, I'm not being a dick. I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm saying I don't want to go to heaven and be with that guy. I don't want to sit at think about it. It's kind of like dying and having to serve Darth Vader the rest of your fucking life. Who the fuck wants that? No, he can go fuck himself. If that's who he is, take a hike, bitch. Rich Torres MMA, thank you, buddy. He says, David, your brain wasn't designed to feel in awe. The very fact that you feel that way points to God. There's no logic in what you've just written, Richie Torres. The fact that I can feel awe and you're saying that points to God, why? It could also just point to the fact that evolution has allowed my brain to create or to become this thing that, in order to motivate me to do enough things that will make me interesting enough to have somebody want to fuck me and have a baby, that I get the dopamine hits. That's why I feel awe. That's why I feel anything. I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong. I'm saying that just because things exist is not a way to point to God. But I still love you, Richie Torres, with all my heart and soul. Good Rich Game says, Colin is an interesting dude, entertaining discussion. He's one of the designers, by the way, of, good Lord, Vigilante 8, Vigilante 8 2.
Cool.
Worked on Twist Metal Black. Good guy. Good Rich Games. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Colin won't go to hell, Richie Torres says, because he didn't repent of his sins. Okay.
Oh, I've never sinned. So.
Yeah. I mean, think about that for a minute. The idea that it's just like, what are you talking about? I mean, think about how dumb this is when you really think about it. I'm not picking on Christianity. I'll pick on the Red Sea's stupid. But think about that for a minute. It's like, okay, so God makes people, makes them bad. Well, just don't make them bad. And then he makes people, makes them bad. It's like, here's my son that I'll torture on earth, so you won't be bad if you believe in this. I mean, it's so fucking crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that I just don't. The Old Testament's very fire and brimstone, and it translates, in my opinion. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I, like many other people, have read it deeply. It's like it doesn't contrast very well with the New Testament, which is more. Jesus had, like, people pretend like Jesus was like a socialist and he loved everyone. It's like, not really. I mean, Jesus like kind of went off on a lot of people and also like was making examples of a lot of people.
And he wore a dress. And he did wear a dress. Yeah.
As many still do. And that's totally okay. It's 2024.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, it would be, it's what I was saying. The ideal Christianity would be one in which God made himself known, like objectively known, right?
Yeah.
The second best thing you could have done was to make it such that it was like a very not passive, but like love is love kind of God, where it was like, yeah, man, everything's good. It would attract like that would be all passive. You would attract pacifists and like people that are truly passive or whatever. And it would probably had a different arc because, there's a lot of righteousness and violence in the Bible too. And I don't know, the idea that there's like, I think I caught you on the tail end of what you were saying with someone else, but it reminded me, and I don't know if you were saying the same thing, which just is like, I would just rather not, and I think this is what you were saying, which is I'd rather just not believe and maybe deal with the consequences, even if they're eternal, in order to not be beholden like a slave to some weird ideology that I don't fully buy into, in such that slavery, like that indoctrination, is necessary to get to the next level, even though I did in objective reality X, Y, and Z that were better than, we keep using Ted Bundy or whatever. It doesn't wash with me either. It is a major problem.
And it makes total sense that a lot of people would go, this is man-made in order to get control over the masses, because it pretty much feels like working in a corporation or something. It's like sacrifice all you love and care about just to get to the next level. And it's like, it doesn't feel good. Yeah, but look, you get a lot more money. It's crazy.
Like the New Testament is kind of like history. I mean, it a lot of it did happen. It just didn't maybe happen the way. And there's a lot of conflict, especially in the Gospels and all that. And I just don't think it's like that far. But like, there's a lot of it that's not far fetched. So why did it have to be so crazy in so many different ways? You know, it's kind of a bummer. Like when you compare it to like its pagan contemporaries and all that, it's much more grounded and like almost hippie-ish, you know.
But there is a lot of stuff that I think people, you know, it's the big effect scenes, right? It's the flood, and it's the parting of the Red Sea, and it's I think that's where you kind of lose a lot of people who, you know, aren't 5. But anyway, but I hear you. Okay. Quinn Bart, thank you for the super chat. He says the reason Christians get attacked more than other religions is because they show up at your door at 9 a.m. on Sunday trying to convert you. Never had a Muslim trying to scare me into religion. I mean, there is a big part, right, of that. But I don't think all religions do that. I know the Mormons do that, but and I know Christians do go all over the world on trying to convert, but I don't think they go to your door in America, do they? I've never had anybody except Mormons.
Yeah, they do. I mean, there are like the Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah, the Mormons will go on missions, but that's about it. I mean, it's better than what ISIS does, which is go around and just kill everyone.
Yeah, no, of course, yes, Colin, that's better. But thank you, Quinn. Tyler, thank you, buddy. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, says Hebrews 11:6. It's hard to see when you refuse to open your eyes. No, it's not, Tysher. That's just horseshit. You can't quote the Bible as a source of truth to begin with, because at least someone like me.
Do you believe that there's any historical truth in it? There's definitely historical truth in it.
Oh, of course. I mean,
so there is some level.
I always attribute the wrong person. I got this Bible from one of our members saying, Jaffe, this is the one to get because I love history, and it goes through and talks about all the historical aspects that are actually it's wonderful. But
I love footnoted Bibles so much. Like,
yeah.
So
when I look at this, there's like a D&D campaign in here too. I think. Look at that. But I'm just like, sure, there's, you ground the horse shit in reality, so the horse shit goes down easier. I know how it works. I play the game, Colin. Come on now.
Sure.
And it's not, by the way, let's be clear. My eyes are not closed, right? I read some of this. It's too fucking long. I've read this. Can science prove the existence of God? I'm always searching because I find it fascinating and curious. I want to do different drugs I haven't gotten to do yet.
Me too, man. That's a big part of it for me is doing some of that stuff.
I don't know if I'm spiritual, but I'm when I say I'm agnostic, Tysher, I'm agnostic. I don't know.
You and I should go to the rainforest with no return ticket and just see what happens.
That until no return ticket was good.
And just see what we're just going to see what happens.
Here's the deal. You guys say you're doing a Last Stand media in San Diego soon, right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're nailing it down.
We'll get a shaman before or after. We'll do some DMT. Or ayahuasca. I've never done it. I'd like to. There's a lot of things I'd like to do. Okay, well, would you do it with me?
Yeah, I think you're like the kind of person I would trust to be with. Actually, like the kind of person because I think you need to be with someone.
Oh yeah, you have to. You have to be. Yeah,
that'll be fun.
All right, good.
And Micah could probably watch this because she probably wouldn't want to do it, so she could probably babysit if she wanted to.
Oh, and she has to live stream it. Do you know how much money we'd make? Answering questions. Okay. Richie says, David, your presupposition is you are decent. Your presupposition that grammar is false. David, your presupposition is that you're decent. That's false. We're all children of wrath. I don't know what you're talking about, Richie Torres. I appreciate the money. I really do. It's very kind and generous of you. And more importantly, we don't have to agree on things to be pals, but I will say, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Emmanuel AI says, Jaffe, can we please get P Turtle back? No, but thank you for the super chat. Richie's back. He says, would love to know where David gets his moral thoughts from being a descendant of social bacteria. I don't know. And I don't care. I don't know where I get the ability for my legs to bend where they bend. But it doesn't mean that's proof of a God. Let's put it this way, pal. I look at religion. I look at religion And I still consider myself a very moral person. Now, where did that come from? Now, did it come from God? Maybe, but you know what? What also came from God, if he's alive, if he's a real thing, is the inability to give me the faith that he gave you. So fuck you and fuck God. Because if he's going to give it to you and you get into heaven, but he didn't give it to me, why would I want to hang out with him anyway? I mean, it's ridiculous. Plus, Ryan says, Colin, thank you, buddy. Would you agree that Christian fundamentalism is what's largely driving attempts to pass laws which restrict abortion, restrict access to contraceptives, etc.?
Yes, I would agree with that. I don't want to conflate that though with the pro-life movement, which I don't think is necessarily a religious movement. But I think the people that want to shut it down like completely do it from a religious standpoint. Yeah, no doubt about it. And the only thing I'm grateful for is that, and with the exception of a few states, they have no real power. In fact, every time a state votes, even a really deeply red state like Kansas is an example, they vote overwhelmingly to legalize abortion. So this is a powerless minority as far as I'm concerned. I think Roe versus Wade getting overturned was a good thing because I think it was just very uncertain. Like we need to have laws, not Supreme Court mandates. So the idea that it kicked everything back to the states means that it'll be messy for a few more years, but eventually it's going to be solved at
Do
every
you
state
think it's
level.
going to cost Trump the election?
No, because Trump, as far as I understand, already proposed a 15-week ban, which is deep. Like that would be like considered pretty liberal even in Europe. So I don't think he's bad on the issue. In my opinion.
Lutron, thank you for the super chat. He says, Colin, it's good to have you here. It would be awesome to see the Dagster here someday. Please don't go to Microsoft on us and absorb Jaffe. We like our indie Jaffe. Congrats on 300, says Lutron. He's a big fan. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Lou.
Do you and Colin, says Brap, thanks, buddy. Think Gen Z will be the first generation where gaming consoles aren't the primary gaming device?
This is what I mean. He's asking this probably because this is what Phil Spencer was saying, that their like internal study has kind of brought this out. I think I've never heard. Well, I have. This executive has made so many excuses, like as to why they are not able to produce. He's saying this is probably true. I mean, I believe their data. Microsoft's probably deeply data driven, probably even more than the other two companies and their competitors. But the Switch is still selling like hotcakes 7 years later, and the PS5 is on pace to sell over 100 million units. So it doesn't seem like. I understand that it's not expanding, but to act like the truncation that brand has seen is the result of a new generational swing, I just don't think is true. Although I think it might play out that way. But by the time it plays out that way, you and I both agree there'll be great cloud technologies and
I mean, I just as a dad of Gen Zers, I can tell you, and they game. They're not really. They game on PC and tablets and phones, but they're in a weird situation because I'm their dad, so I have everything. And that's what they choose.
What's the story with tablets these days? Because I feel like tablets kind of came in. Like I know people still use them and they buy them and whatever, but they're not really like a thing anymore, right? Like they were supposed to be like the thing I took the laptop over, and then it never happened.
No. Just like the Vision Pro, which is like Tim Cook's like, I don't even use my computer. I just use my Vision Pro. I'm like, dude, I'd love that feature, but we're not there yet at $3,500 a pop.
Dude, I love the pictures of the dudes with the Apple Vision Pro driving the Cybertruck is just so amazing. So amazing. Nerdy as hell.
Benji Martinez, thank you, buddy. Oh, okay. Benji Martinez is the one who told me to get the Bible, and you haven't read it. I have not. No, Benji, 41 months. Thank you, buddy. I've not read the whole goddamn phone book, but I have flipped through it and I've looked at the pictures and I've read some passages. There are people that claim that they've read the Bible over and over and they can quote passages. I think that's ridiculous. You know
that's a lot.
It's like a 2,500 page book. Who's going to read this all day? If God really wanted me to convert, he'd write like a pamphlet or he'd send me a tweet. If God's so goddamn powerful, put all this in a fucking 180 character tweet and I'll be there for you. But but thank you, Benji. Fupy, do we need Zach McCracken remake? Is what he wants to know. I know the game, but
no, I don't know the game. I don't even know what that is.
We don't need it. All right, we got Mark the Cyborg wants to say hi. Mark the
Hey.
Cyborg is.
Oh, hey, dude.
Is that
How's
a
it going?
cat? What do you got in your lap there, buddy?
That's my puppy Jojo.
Oh,
She's very
what a
ill-tempered.
dick! What a
Jojo.
dick!
Dude, you moved on really quick, Jack. I've never heard of this Zach McCracken game in my entire life, but it's because
Zach
it's on
McCracken's
platforms I would have never had.
I think it's a PC adventure game from like the
Commodore, DOS, Amiga, Atari ST.
Yeah.
October 88. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was joking. Fupy was just trying to make a joke. I mean, we can
I never
talk
heard of
about
this.
Zach
It's weird
McCracken.
it's weird when you encounter a game you've never heard, or at least for me, that I've never
Oh
heard.
my God, I mean, especially with Commodore, which was much bigger in Europe. There's so many games that, I was peripherally aware of, but I never played.
I never had a Commodore.
Yeah, no, we had one at school, but that was it. All right, Mark, sorry about that. Mark the Cyborg, what's up?
Yeah, how's it going? Hey again, Colin. Colin interviewed me about my leg like 8 years ago or 7 years ago, I guess now was this time.
But, in LA.
I'm an amputee, and
right, I remember that
Cyborg name.
Cool.
But it's funny though that experience I think is one thing that can give Colin a bit of grounding on like where I'm coming from, and that like I am an agnostic, and I would say that my belief position is pretty much in the same spot yours is, David, where I don't think we can know definitively anything. But in a situation where I basically thought I was going to die, I did sort of fall back on some of my like Catholic upbringing, because similar to Colin, I went to Catholic school for like most of my life. And I found myself praying and realizing that it wasn't necessarily the belief in God that was forcing me to pray. It was me just having a minute to kind of take stock of my situation and center myself on what I'm really trying to fight for here, and things like that. So it was a pretty significant event that happened later in life for me, like 33. And that gave me a perspective on religion that I think I haven't had before, but have carried with me since, which is that I kind of came to the realization that whether religion is based on factual rules that you need to abide by in order to meet the criteria to get into heaven, or not, or if it's just stories, is actually, like, to me, in my view, kind of irrelevant, because ultimately it's what morals are you pulling from the stories? What lessons are you pulling from them? And I personally don't think that you have to even limit yourself to just religions with that, because most of the great novels we've ever read had something that really spoke to us about some kind of moral lesson that can be gleaned from it, or a different perspective or insight on something. And being I've been in the military for a very long time, so I'm around a lot of more conservative people than me. I grew up in Toronto, so I'm kind of a liberal, but at the same time, like, I became very good friends with a lot of people who are quite devoutly religious. And when you spend a lot of time with those people, you start to realize that even though deep in their heart they believe it, or like they've had it as a tradition in their family for a number of years, or whatever it would be, it's just their thing that they can hold on to when they're in a dark place and be like, okay, do the sign of the cross, say a little prayer. Okay, time to keep fighting, And I think that it would benefit you actually to think of some of the people in your life who are religious, less of people who have been suckered in by believing the literal interpretation of that story and thinking that it's all true, and kind of think of them like a person who just really likes Star Wars, and Yoda told them taught them how to be a good person and to think about things in the long view. Like there's a million morals you can pull out of anything.
But the thing is, though, with that, I mean, I read a really good opinion piece in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago where a guy's like, he's like, look, I'm pretty much an atheist, but he's like, I think religion's important, and it's exactly what you're saying, which is he's like, there is a great deal of comfort people take from it that helps them with their lives in ways that we have nothing. We don't have, like I said to Colin earlier, we don't have a pill to help a parent really grieve the loss of their child.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not talking about it at that level. I'm talking about the fact that, like, if you're in a foxhole, people say, well, you pray to God then, don't you? It's like, you do. And let's look into that. Let's question why that is. There's probably just a purely psychological reason, but maybe there is a spiritual gene. Maybe there is. But again, being an agnostic allows you to say that, right? You can go, maybe there is something that when we think we're about to die, we somehow reconnect with where we came from. That's awesome. Let's discover that. But don't tell me that goes hand in hand with all this other horseshit that you have no proof of. But do you have proof that most people, when they're in a really perilous situation, will, in their minds, if not physically,
I'm not.
out?
I'm not saying everyone would. I'm saying
Most
that
people would. Most people
yeah.
do. I think that's why it's a cliche to say that there are no atheists in foxholes.
Well, I mean, I don't think I would say that either. And again, like I didn't necessarily think that my experience going through my amputation was me like reconnecting with religion. It was just realizing that I have that pull to just take a moment before I go to sleep or something, or try to go to sleep. I was in a lot of pain at that time, but to say, here's what I really want out of this. Here's what I'm fighting for.
Right.
Here's what I want to have happen. And I think that guiding principle is one of the things that helped give me the courage to get through it. But on the other end of the coin, the redemption end about the whole like Colin being left outside the pearly gates and Ted Bundy being outside hanging out with his dad, I think that
why is my dad hanging out with Ted Bundy? That's the big question. Like,
because
why is he hanging out with?
Okay, I was kidding, but it was just because the premise, which I accept as like a valid premise, is that if Ted Bundy follows all the religious guidelines, the rules, if he ticks all the boxes, he can get in, even though Colin wouldn't be able to because he decided to not do a sacrament when he was 14. You know, like that does sound a little silly, but I think the premise of that is more accurately that no matter what you've done, there is still redemption you can seek by taking responsibility for your actions. Now, having to do that in the form of going to a church and getting in a confessional, saying the act of contrition or whatever you got to do isn't necessarily the point. The point is genuinely knowing that what you did was wrong and wishing you could do anything that you could to not do that. If you feel genuine repentance for it, and you could say, for lack of a better term, or remorse, if you want to just use a more secular word, and that having that idea that there's a path to redemption is the thing that can make everyone always stay accountable for their own choices, because you're never
just not
too
being
far
an
gone.
asshole.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like that's not. It's not compelling because I don't. Why do we need that path?
But because like I'm just saying that's the lesson to be pulled from it, that it's not necessarily you repenting to your God in those kind of literal terms, is you taking responsibility for your own actions and genuinely trying to make up for them however you can, even when you think you're too far gone. Because I'm willing to bet there's a lot of
hang on a second, one second. Colin, the pot's kicked in pretty bad. I'm not a judge anymore. Are you bored? Are we ready to move on from Mark?
Yeah. Okay. I'll
after this, we have to cut him off, but yeah, we can.
I'm not going to cut him off, but I don't know anymore.
Yeah,
so
we can go after this.
I'm just saying,
guys, the dog and going, should I tell him it's probably time to put the dog down? And I'm like, I shouldn't say that.
No, not my poor puppy.
He's so angry. What's the matter with him?
Honestly, it's just because my other puppy's right here, and she's very territorial. She's super small and she has no front teeth, so she has no bite, so can literally only bark. Is all bark, no bite. Quite technically.
Son of a bitch. All right. Anyway, sorry. Finish up then. Yes, please. Mark.
Anyway,
I'm just very high all of a sudden. I don't hold my liquor like Colin does.
I'll simplify it down to one sentence. Ignore the nitty gritty of the rules and try to just pull out of it what those rules are trying to teach you as far as like a moral or a thing goes. And I think that
wonderful
the idea
morals in the Bible and all religions. Absolutely. Look, man, I cried like a fucking baby when I saw the movie The Shack. That movie about I did. It broke my heart. I loved it. I'm a spiritual guy. All right, buddy. Thank you, Mark.
All right, right.
All right, bye, Mark. Yeah, it's funny because that always gets into something that I find fascinating personally, Jaffe, which is the origins of morality and like the governance of it. I just feel there's no doubt that organized religion predating Christianity has been a positive influence on general morality, although it has been broken along, powers that be and the priesthood or the kings or nobility. Right. They always do whatever they want, but it obviously manages and courses people into certain lanes of ethics and morality and the way they treat other people. But I don't think that was born out of religion. I think that I personally believe that there's an innate goodness out of us. This actually is probably a little bit deterministic because it's like there's a reason for us to take care of each other and to not be hostile towards each other and to all of that. And when you see like really deep anthropological and archaeological evidence of the way cavemen, Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon would treat their wounded, like it was clear that they had people with them sometimes for decades that like couldn't help themselves or were like gravely injured and brought back to health. And maybe there's even just a biological reason, like you need more protection. This person's an important man and we need to bring them back to health. But nonetheless, I think we've been guided along this path where I think that it was human goodness that was put into religion as a rule set to govern the masses as opposed to it being born out of that. And I think that that's important. And that is one of the unique, it's one of the things that makes us unique, but it's also, you can see it in like our dogs even.
Yeah, you absolutely, it's not, kindness is not limited to humans. Absolutely. At least what we call kindness. Videos on Instagram of animals like genuinely being sweet, and it's not anthropomorphizing them. They're genuinely don't know they're being filmed, and it's a dog helping out a cat or whatever. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just think that that's important. Like, I think religion has great power, but I think we gleam everything onto it. Like it's the all explaining thing. But no, it's a human creation. Maybe it's a human creation of a connection to something that no one else understands on the planet because they're not sentient enough. Right. But I don't choose to give religion that level of power, which I think is something we share, and why we both don't take to it very much is just, I don't want to be in the thrall of this thing where it's like it's controlling you. It's like it's so. I believe in free will. I can't put free will into those confines, because you're always going to be making choices, not because you think they're right or good, but because they fit within the confines of the expectations of you getting to this paradise or whatever. And it doesn't work for me.
The Sam Harris argument is not compelling to you then?
That there's a biological answer
to free will? Yeah.
Not really, in the sense that I don't even debate the deep science of it. And he's obviously he's a neurologist, and he's obviously making a much more deeply biological, I don't know, like his hypothesis is much more deeply biological than I think can even be proven right now. But it wouldn't surprise me to say like, this literally can be baked down to here are all of the things that happened that got you to this decision, or like this feeling, or this, whatever it is. I just don't know that necessarily proves anything, because that's just the mechanism by which it happened.
Well, so I've been reading his book, Free Will, and I think I got it figured out. I know it sounds like I'm crazy. I'm not fucking with you. I think what it's like is almost like Bandersnatch or something, where we are wind-up toys, and it is deterministic, but we are outside of this wind-up toy. And whenever we want, we can step in and make a decision. But we're not always in control of the wind-up toy. It's kind of the isness of who we really are, which is not this, I think, is what does have free will to step in and redirect and change it. And then we let it continue to tell the story.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true.
No, that's actually really fascinating. I think there might be something to that, because it's not quite what you're saying, but I think about it often when I'm doing mechanical things. Like I'm just carrying a bowl of cereal, and I'm like, how do I know how to do this?
Right.
Like,
how do you breathe?
Why do I know to do this? Like, not even the physical nature, but like, how did I tell myself to do this? Right. Like, and why am I just holding it? And I'm telling myself, like, in my mind, like, drop it, and you just won't. Like your hand's just holding. It's like, it is very strange. But that's the thing, is that I just don't know. It's like the Big Bang, like where there are two problems with the Big Bang. Like, where did everything come from? And there's also this period, like, I don't know, I think 100,000 years after it or whatever, where there's like things don't make sense, and then it continues to make sense after that or whatever. It's very similar to this, where I'm like, yeah, that is probably a series of biological dice rolls that happened or whatever. Yeah. But there's still like the finger that pushes the domino, and we don't know what that necessarily could have been. So it could be like, that's just the mechanism by which this happens, and it is religious, or that's the mechanism by which it happens, and it's all interconnected. I mean,
there's, the big bounce theory. You've heard that theory? I mean, that one seems.
What is it? Well, tell me about that. I know that, but I don't.
The universe is expanding,
right?
And then eventually it will expand and then contract. And this has been happening forever. And
right.
We have this universe, or a version of this universe, potentially, as long back as anyone can conceive, if not eternally. That just was what is. So when people say, well, what was before the Big Bang? It must have been God. It's like, maybe it was the universe that happened before this universe.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So, all right. Listen, I want to bring in Dylan, who's been mugging for the camera. Good Lord, you got some confidence, baby. What's going on, Dylan? You were
hey, Jaffe.
You were on with good Sir Colin Moriarty. Hello, Dylan.
Hi, Dylan.
Hey, big fans of you both. Colin, I listen to Sacred Symbols, listen to Defining Dukes. You're doing great stuff on YouTube, and love listening. And Jaffe, this is the third time I've called you, beating Ragnarok in the time that we've taken two of us calling. So it was great, great game. But on the topic that I was trying to get into, that you guys were sparking up earlier on religion and kind of my perspective on it, I was raised pretty hardcore, I guess, as like terms of religion. For a good 18 years of my life, going to
What's
church.
next?
Yeah. Oh, so I'm sorry. Let me just turn you up here because I didn't want to feedback on because I'm not using a headphone. Sorry.
I said what sect?
I believe it's just conservative Christian, like because I live here in Vegas, so pretty much whatever Christianity here is in Vegas, maybe just conservative Christianity or baseline Christianity. I can give you the name of the church if you want, but I know we don't have enough time for that. But
even if we had all the time in the world, I can't fathom anyone would be interested in knowing the name of the church.
I know, right? It's just there's a dime a dozen.
I don't mean to be a dick, but people in the chat are like, "You rude to the." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm trying to make sure that people watching are excited. They're interested. You got to keep it rolling when it's a live show.
Trying to give them a story, trying to give them, a little bit of backstory. But I know I blabber on it. I'm like,
it's not a fucking date, bitch. We don't need to sit here. What's the point, my good sir?
At least let me buy you dinner, David. At least let me buy you dinner.
Yeah, in Vegas, you got it.
Yeah, they got strip steak here. You don't want to go?
Nah, I'd rather go to I like the buffets. Anyway, Dylan, so what's going on, baby?
Okay, so on the concept of people's kind of like faith in religion, I'm kind of opposed to there's not even really a God or anything in terms of like Christianity, Muslims, or any kind of like subsect of religion. I believe that of course, like Colin and you said, that it is a byproduct of something that we do to kind of cuddle ourselves in times of great stress, in times of something that we need to latch onto, something that we don't physically have here. Like what you said in the foxhole, I'm going to pray to God, even if I don't believe in God, because I'm going to fucking die. And there is what I believe, why people kind of believe in the afterlife, right, is the certainty of the uncertainty of what happens next. Because, of course, as humans, we're kind of we're designed since our evolution, since our past. Sorry, I'm getting a little nervous. We're designed to know everything. We want to know everything. Right?
Don't get nervous. But what are you going to regret not asking Colin when you hang up? That's what we want you here for.
Oh my God!
Don't get nervous.
Yeah, there's no reason to be. What are you nervous about? Let's talk about that, Dylan. What the fuck is going on with that?
Okay, so like I
fucking relationship with me or Colin. He's just this fucking guy, and I'm just this fucking guy sitting here.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Like you guys, like are a big piece of kind of like the culture. I eat, especially God of War, and sacred symbols. Kind of like a non-bias. So I listen to Defining Dukes, and the PlayStation podcast. So I listen to both sides. I don't want to be in like a console war sort of thing. I think that's the stupidest thing.
I agree.
On Twitter, it's like
what's your best game of last year? That's what I want to know. What game did you love and touched your soul?
Oh God, this was last year. So Baldur's Gate 3 came out last year. I played that on early access.
Shit out of that game, in my opinion.
Beautiful game, because I got it on when Stadia was a thing. I had it just to kind of experiment with the technology. I'm kind of an enthusiast for that, and I love video games, so I kind of want to expand into that. And I got early access for that. Love the game. I knew it from the beginning. It was going to be something special, like one of those genre-defining games, like BioShock, System Shock.
Stadia exclusive at first.
It was, for a little bit. PC and Stadia,
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Anyway,
That's interesting. I don't think I even knew that.
Think about that. Yeah, it was. I mean, God, they were so dumb. That whether that thing could have worked or not because of the streaming is a different issue. But the fact that they're like, what do you mean we gotta spend money on games?
We gotta make fucking games? What? Look, because like if they got me into Stadia, because I love video games all in source. I don't care about this console
streaming where you live. Is it a good experience?
In Vegas, they have 5G streaming. So in around my area, it worked when it worked and it didn't work when it didn't work, right? So it was still kind of like that new front of technology. So when I beat Resident Evil 8 on Stadia, and it was a fun experience for me personally. But I know that it's kind of a weird, what's the way to explain it? It's almost a wrong time sort of thing, I think. And of course, in the industry, that's been pointed out, if you're first to the party, it might not be the best thing for you. Right. Google didn't believe in their product because it didn't project the numbers that they want immediately, right? They realized that games take multiple years to make. And now with the industry, this was like a little bit pre-COVID, I think, when Stadia launched. So they kind of had an uptick when Cyberpunk came out, and they just didn't realize that the industry kind of was. I don't think they were working there for the first place, and especially for the product that they didn't believe in, and that the products.
Yeah,
You know, they didn't get the numbers.
that fucking thing with like 5 gotta play games, and you would have been off the races. But you know, fuck them. Dylan, thank you for calling, buddy. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Josh 420, is this Josh 420? The Josh 420 that has my Twisted Metal jacket?
Yeah, yep, that's right. Hey, Colin. Hey, Jaffe.
Hey, Josh.
Fan of you guys. I'm not gonna waste too much of you guys this time. I'm just gonna take my hit and then.
I'll take my hit with you, baby. Come on now.
All right, let's go.
Wait, wrong side. They look alike. First time I ever got high was out of a goddamn Diet Coke bong, 2 liters at Chan Park's house from God of War team.
Oh, that really?
Oh yeah, we had a God of War party at Chan's house. I think it was. Chan's
but that was the first time you ever.
Yeah, I'd never done it before. I was a Nancy Reagan kid. Just say no. I was like, I'm not going to do that shit.
Yeah, you were from the deep south.
Oh my god, dude! It hit me like a fucking hammer. It was delightful.
I smoked for the first time in a Taco Bell parking lot on 112 on Long Island, and it was a blunt. And I was with my.
How old were you?
I was 14 or 15.
Oh, I missed out. I
was with my friend Chris and his cousin, and I couldn't stop coughing, and they were really mad at me because it was like, you're gonna give us away kind of thing. And I was like, oh, and it's just a very vivid memory for me. Is it
still legal? Is it legal in Virginia or not yet?
It's actually it's medical. I have medical marijuana.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like I'm trying to unwind personally from my meds, so it's been great for my anxiety to kind of manage it, which I appreciate because I really do not want to be on those meds. But it was so the state legislature passed it 2 years ago, but there was no mechanism to sell it. And it was just a few days ago that the governor vetoed the legislature's proposal. So in Virginia, possession's legal and growing it's legal. And there are 5 dispensaries in the state that you can buy it for medical marijuana, and there's otherwise no way to get it legally. So
got it.
I'm sorry, that's a long-winded answer, but it's timely.
No. That's how we were in California for a long time, and then now it's it's like pizza. 420, Josh, what's going on, baby?
Yeah, so I love the discussion on religion. I'm somebody that was raised to be Catholic, and then I fell out of religion when I fell into depression. Bad things started happening in my life, and I turned mushrooms. Actually, I came across this video on YouTube about Johns Hopkins University doing this study for patients with depression and using psilocybin mushrooms to help with their depression. I replicated their study. I bought some mushrooms from California, and I put on the headphones, and I used their curated music playlist that they have. And it was just like, it was so intense, like the visuals that you have inside your head. Like it's life-changing.
How was your depression affected?
Oh, it's been completely eliminated. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. Like it sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like
what you see is
the same thing. But keep going though. Sorry.
Well, I wanted to ask real quick, Josh. Is it because like what you see is so profound or so beautiful, or it gives you a new way of looking at life when you come back from that trip? Is that what it is? Because I've done mushrooms.
It's hard to put into words, Colin. But what I would say is like things that you can normally think of when you're sober, they just have a different effect when you're high like this on mushrooms. It's like you're getting the answers to like everything, like everything. Like Bill Burr says this, and I totally agree with him, that like when he did his mushroom trip, he's like everything he did wrong in his life, he understood why he did it. And I had that kind of same feeling where it was just like these things that happen to you when you're a kid, they do have this like profound impact when you're an adult and you don't realize it. And it's crazy. There's just these things that you don't even know about yourself that get opened up when you're tripping like this.
The most spiritual experience I ever had was the first time, or first and third time I was on pot. Because, and I know I get in trouble for this, but I don't mean kids should do this stuff, like little kids. But if you hit 18 and you haven't experienced shifts in consciousness in altered states, I think you do yourself a disservice. You need to be safe, and you shouldn't be going out doing stuff that's going to hurt you. But something more natural like weed or mushrooms to go what I see is just one layer of this experience. The minute you recognize that, you can't help but go, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I'm just grateful to be on the ride, man. But I'm thrilled it helped your depression. I have a buddy who's did ketamine here in San Diego, and it was great for them. And think about that they're limiting this. They make this shit illegal.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
You know, that you can grow for free. I mean, it's such a scam.
It's just funny too, because it's all about intent, right? Because like going into it with the right mindset. Because I did mushrooms when I was younger, and it made like the fucking Pink Floyd laser light show I was at like awesome and all that kind of stuff. But like I never went into it with a serious mind. Very similar to acid. Like I never did acid. I really want to do acid at some point with like some sort of intent for it. It was actually Mad Men that inspired me to look into acid, and then it became like a more mainstream sort of thing because there's that awesome scene where Roger's doing it like in that room with all these stiff suit wearing dudes, and it's like so cool and so interesting. And you're supposed to find something about yourself in there. But I wonder, is there a potential bad trip where you learn things that you don't want to know, or like this?
I had a fucking terrible trip. I had the worst trip you could possibly fucking have. I took way too much. I took 7 grams of mushrooms, which you're not supposed to take that much for your first time. Well, it wasn't my first time taking mushrooms. I had taken it before, and I wasn't getting visuals. I wasn't getting the experience I wanted. And so I took a lot more. And because I didn't have much left, I had like 10 grams left. And I didn't want to leave, 3 grams left over if it didn't work if I took like 5, and then I would have
right. But so what was the bad trip? What did you see? What happened? Why was it bad?
Oh, I just got stuck in like intense hallucinations, like bad thought loops. Like I remember one point, like literally saying like, I want to die, like, because I just wanted to get out. I wanted it to end. It was so fucking bad. My boyfriend, he was next to me. He had to comfort me, and it was terrible. I threw up all over myself, and I was just like, felt like an eternity. But it was like during the come down, you experience this like intense feeling of like just love, like healing. Like I felt truly purged of like so many toxins, like so much of my childhood trauma just got purged out of me. It's like
in that experience,
you just get this intense clarity. What's that?
In the negative one that happened.
The come down of the negative.
Yes.
One.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. That's interesting.
Okay, but I don't know much about mushrooms. So when you're talking about like what Colin did and what you did, are there different types where some are going to be, or is it just the amount that's different?
It's just the amount. There's debate about this, but if you look in like growers, expert, like on Reddit, like the mushroom subreddits, most experts would tell you that it's really just the amount. That anybody that says that there's a difference between all these different strains of mushrooms, it's kind of just in their own.
What about that about God? I mean,
different.
there's a theory there, which I think is actually quite a beautiful theory. But I mean, and I don't know, I have no evidence of it, but it's a kind of a neat idea to think about that marijuana exists, ayahuasca exists in nature, and mushrooms exist in nature. These things exist. Maybe they're maybe that's what we're supposed to do. Maybe that is the religion. It's like, this is going to let you visit to the next level. You can't get there yet, but I mean, cause it's weird, right? I mean, but again, it could also just be our brain looking at a pattern and saying it's weird, but it could just be, you could eat grass and nothing will happen. Fuck you, Jaffe. Could be, but I think it's kind of cool that this stuff exists out there. And I wish it wasn't so fucking, just shamed. I think to experience the different filters of life is part of the experience. I think I'm really high, Josh.
Well, it's funny.
Oh no, me and you both did.
Yeah, but you guys are good at it. I'm not good at it. I can't. Well, I might piss myself sitting here and enjoy it.
Right, you're gonna piss yourself?
Because I'm bored by the idea of getting up and going to the bathroom.
Oh, I see. I'm
just like, I'm not going anywhere because this is good and I'm high.
It's funny, man. Just because I feel this way about alcohol too. Like, alcohol is dangerous and easy to abuse. And I personally feel like you learn a lot about a person when they're drunk, not because they're uninhibited, but like, I think you kind of get to the core, you angry drunks, right? Really nice, kind drunks, philosophical drunks. Like, you always kind of revert to this thing. Me personally, I feel really good. Like when I'm drunk, like I'm like, I actually feel like I have no burdens right now, but I know that I need to control that. And
what do you mean right now? You're not drunk right now.
Oh no, not right now. I mean, yeah, sorry, no, not now. I don't drink in the house actually. I only drink when we go out.
You mean when you do drink? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, when I do drink, like I'll come home, and I'll have had 2 or 3 old fashions with dinner or whatever, and I come home and I'm like, damn, I'm just sitting back playing Helldivers or something like that. I'm like, I just feel really good. It's another unique drug. I just think it's just like many drugs, like opium or things like that. It's like it's too easy to abuse and too easy to fall down the rabbit hole and destroy yourself with it. And the interesting thing about some of these hallucinogens is that they don't seem to be that necessarily, like
addictive, you mean?
Yeah, and like that there's no real reason to even want to do it like that often. You're not getting high, you're having like an experience. Like who the fuck wants to live?
Right.
And, like I'm sure there are like, mushroom heads or something that are out there like doing it every day, but like why would you want to, as opposed to like augmenting your reality in some way? That's why I think being an alcoholic is so understandable. Like I understand it like totally, and stay away from it for that reason.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, Colin, if you look into like these studies that John Hopkins has done there's been numerous studies across the world of the treatment of using magic mushrooms to help with depression, and they've found that it's helping people get over their alcohol addiction, their meth addiction, all sorts of addictions. Yep.
It's crazy. It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's
good wonderful
stuff.
That it's finally coming back, and because it was on the way in the 60s, and then they got all legal with it.
But you know why I'm so skeptical of it? I always make fun of myself with my friends and family like this, because I've been smoking pot for so long. Is it's like you eventually start having a bias towards being like, oh yeah, marijuana. You see this the study that shows it's the fucking best. And I'm always skeptical of like all these things where it's like, yeah, acid is this and mushrooms are this. And I'm like, man, this seems so good to be true. Like all the things that they told me not to do are great. So I try to go in with like some sort of skepticism, but it seems like it's usually not met. Like the only destructive agents seem to be like tobacco and meth, and obviously like whatever the fuck's going on with the southern border and all the stuff that's coming up over it now. But like the traditional, like don't do dare drugs. It's like, seems like cocaine's the least of your problems in some sense. I've never actually done coke, but
it's I know I see the capitalist boogeyman everywhere, but it is very weird that it's kind of like, okay, here's the stuff that you can grow that we can't sell you, and it also makes you not worry about all the shit that we use as the stick and the carrot to get you to keep showing up to work and making money for us. Of course they don't want us to have it. Of course they want to push it away because it takes their power away. Apathy is very, very powerful.
Indeed.
And when you're fucking high, who gives a shit? Listen, Josh, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it, man.
Bye, Josh. Thank you.
All right, we got 3 more calls and we're going to wrap it up. What happened? What did I do?
You're funny, man. Yeah.
What did I do?
No, nothing. It's just like nothing. You didn't do anything.
Josh, what happened? Colin thinks I hurt your feelings.
No, you didn't. I was just saying thank you guys. I'm a big fan. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are great.
Josh, let me ask you this. When did you start doing the marijuana?
I'm
kidding. I love you, Josh. I love you.
Very well done.
Right,
that's good.
This is Sam. Sam.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Samuel.
Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
Not to change the topic completely, but to change the topic completely. I was just wondering, I don't know, Colin, how close you follow this space, because you do so you do like commentary. I'm just gonna ignore Jaffe.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have to.
You do like commentary on like games and stuff. I don't know exactly what to call it, but you might call it like a pundit or commentary, or like covering the news or something. And this is obviously, you started out at IGN. I followed IGN back then, and as like a kid, I followed G4 and all this other stuff.
Sorry, Jeff, you're I'm sorry. Stand by, Sam. I'm listening. Stand by.
I'm listening to Sam, and I'm going, oh my God. It reminds me of that skit on SNL where Chris Farley is like, every word more useful.
Why are you Why were you laughing to begin with?
Because it's funny. Not what Sam is saying. but it's just.
Say, I know, Sam. I'm listening. All right, the commentary space.
Brought so much joy to both of you. So
I'm gonna mute myself, Samuel.
Yeah, same.
Anyway,
good.
So I pretty much stopped following. I used to listen to Podcast Beyond, for example. I pretty much stopped following all of that kind of gaming related news. I still played games, but I just didn't follow any of it online. And I just got back into sort of looking at the YouTube space where people talk about stuff. That's how I found your podcast that you do on the PlayStation, Sacred Symbols. And I was just wondering, because it seems to me that they're like, and I don't know how closely you follow this space, but with the other YouTubers, because you kind of have your own thing going, but it seems to me like the YouTubers are now a lot more influential about like narratives that go around the space than people at like IGN, even though people still care about what people say on IGN, they get outraged about it or whatever the flavor of the day is. But I was wondering if you felt that too, because I just see the kind of narratives that go around these YouTube spaces. I feel like they catch on a lot more, and it's maybe just where I'm looking at them, especially with people like, not to like bring up any specific people, but like Dustin Legary at IGN.
Dude, get to the point. What do you want to know? What do you?
I was just wondering
if you think Sammy?
If you think that's correct. Like, I don't really feel like.
Okay, gotcha. Is it correct, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the powers have shifted, and now there's a new commentary that's not based on the websites, but on YouTube and podcast services. But I don't pay very close attention to it, to be honest. I feel like there's so much of it.
Yeah,
like this is some of it. This is like a completely minor portion of it. I continuously encounter YouTube channels, Twitch streamers, whatever, where I'm like, who is this person? And they're like massive. I'm like, I don't even understand how I never heard of you or encountered you at all. So I can only imagine how many people have never heard of me. But but I think that you can see with like all of this new Gamergate kind of stuff going on or whatever, Gamergate 2, like everything's kind of like the power imbalance is remarkable. So yeah, I agree. I think with what you're saying,
Samuel, I appreciate it, baby.
Jaffe, I don't know. I just couldn't hold it in, like just you laughing as soon as it got to me, dude. That was an awesome moment. That was so funny.
Lock that in, bitch. Yeah.
Dylan, great, hey
Dylan.
Hey guys.
Dylan.
How you doing? So I have a religion question or a game developer question. I know you only have time for one, so which one would you rather?
What's more interesting for the audience?
You've covered religion a lot, so I'll go with game development. So
better yet, which one can Colin answer better? Because it's really
just go on. It's fine.
All right, go on.
So both of you guys have a long history in the games industry, and you're pretty well traveled across the country. So I went to university, got a degree in game dev. Been out a couple years just supporting my partner, but we're looking to move, and I want to try to break into that industry full time as a lifelong career. I know there's remote, but like networking's a thing too. Don't really want to go to California for similar reasons to Colin, but we've looked at like Seattle, New York, Austin. Life advice wise, where do you think it's a good spot to go to start a career in that industry in the US?
What industry specifically?
Game design.
As a designer?
Yeah.
Go wherever your wife or your partner wants to be and work and make your own shit. Do not get into that industry. You will hate it.
Even with the with just like networking opportunities and GDC and things like that, you think you just pure, because that's what I'm doing right now.
I think the question is, here's the question. Do you want to be a designer like you would like to work at Sony Santa Monica and build levels for a God of War game, or do you want to be a designer like you want to be Neil Druckmann or Jonathan Blow, and you've got like a vision and you want to share it with the world? Which one is it?
Eventually, of course.
No. What's the essence? What do you want to? What's the reason you're getting in? Because
the essence would be narrative design and like character design is what like the essence of it would be.
But is it your vision, or are you happy to retire at 70 years old in the industry and you've been helping a big team get a vision across, or do you?
In a perfect world, I would like to do my vision, but I'm a team player too, and I can put in the 20-30 years it takes to get to that point.
Okay. I mean, look, I would say video games are so easy to make right now. Not AAA games, but to express yourself through interactivity gets easier every couple of months. And unless you just fancy a career where you're going to get laid off a lot, no matter how good you are, you're going to move around a lot. I would just make your own games and, immediately express yourself, and maybe you'll be able to make a career of it. Maybe you won't, but I think going into the game, I would never advise anyone to go into this business right now. It just, at least at the level that you're talking about. And I don't mean to be a downer. Colin, would you agree with this or no?
Well, I think I do agree with it in the main, but I actually think it's kind of like it's kind of a shitty choice either way right now. And I don't, it's like, you want to be realistic to people or whatever. Like almost 10,000 people have gotten laid off this year, and they all had experience, and then breaking in. It sounds like you have some experience, right? And it sounds, am I gleaming that like freelance?
That's correct. Yeah, I have some, but not a lot of professional experience. It's more
right.
like
Okay.
free
So
projects. Yeah.
Okay. So like, to me, I do agree with Jaffe. It's like making your own thing would be more satisfying. I just think that's also a really tough road. That's not going to be. I'm just saying you could have the next big thing.
Failure, but failure, if that's not your primary job at first, make that your primary job when you get the success. But even if you fail 20 times before you hit it, you're still doing what you love and you're expressing yourself.
Like right now, I work a full-time job as my day job, but I work on a side project on the side with a very small team just to stay active in development. But I would like to throw myself fully at that career, because it's hard. You just feel, you know how it is. You get exhausted after working all day. Other jobs, I have an on-call job, so I work after hours too. So it's hard for me to have enough bandwidth to.
Do you think you're good at it?
I think so. From what I've done.
If you were me, here's what I would do. I would take the next year, once this project wraps up, and I would just build levels in Fortnite, Unreal Creator, and Roblox. And I would go, with your design skills, can you attract enough people that you're actually starting to build a fan base? And if you are, you can either use that as a, what do they call it? Like a portfolio when you want to go out and get a job somewhere, or you can build your own career from being a guy who makes a fuck ton of money. Epic Games last year or last quarter did not deliver on their what do they call them? They're not expectations, but their projections, because so many people were making money off of building Fortnite levels in Unreal Creator 5 that they ended up paying out more money to those people than they had anticipated. So I'm not saying it's easy and you may not do well at it, but there's already a mechanism in place that if you want to see if the audience vibes with your shit and you want to build at the same time a portfolio, if you really want to get into the big studios, that's what I would do.
And I got a lot of privilege too, because my partner is a chemical engineer. Is probably going to have a 6-figure job here pretty soon. So we've talked about me just taking a year off and fully dedicating to that if I didn't want to
do that shit, man. That's great.
Take advantage of that. I mean, the thing I was going to say, Jaffe, which I think is important though, is it just seemed like that's a good idea. It's so crowded. And I just speak from some experience. Like we make very, Liliamo, a very specific kind of game that's never going to sell many copies. But even with Sacred Symbols, even with what I think Hyroxia 2 is like an 8 on Metacritic, which is great. We sold like 25,000 copies of that game or something, 30,000 copies of that game. I think people underestimate how little they're going to sell when they come to market for most games, unless you have a really good, and it gets worse and worse as time goes on, unless you have a really good PR apparatus, unless someone important plays your game, unless you get your ads in front of the right people, unless you have like a really phenomenal hit like Helldivers. So I feel like it's kind of a shitty Hobson's choice at this point. Like if you want to get in the mainstream development, LA, Seattle, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, I mean, these are like good places to go, but I would caution against that simply because of the numerical shit. Like the layoffs are not anywhere near being done. After the quarterlies come out, there's going to be a whole nother set of layoffs depending on what, companies are on there in their fiscal year, whether it's Q4, Q1, and games are you can see them left and right, like games that, like this guy from BioWare and this guy from Bethesda are making this role-playing game. And like that shit's getting canceled left, right, and center after 2 years or 3 years in development. It just, teams need to reestablish like what they need and what they want. And so like, it's low. I feel like it's low percentage either way. So it's a matter of like, I think Jaffe's right about like what you ultimately want to achieve. Because there's a total possibility you get in front of the right person, a recruiter at Naughty Dog, and you end up at Naughty Dog for fucking 30 years. I mean, that's totally possible. It's also possible that you make like a really amazing Metroidvania or something and it does sell 100,000 copies and you become rich off of that. But it's like joining YouTube today or something like that. And even on Patreon, like Last Stand is big on, like, really big on Patreon, but it's pretty small on YouTube. We can't penetrate that market even with some knowledge of the space or whatever. So I don't know. I just ward against people making the obvious an easy choice unless they realize that it's a dice roll and that it's
Well, I don't
really
need to be the next
lucky.
Tim Sweeney either. Even just like a stable career, like you said, just selling enough that you can make a career out of it, I'm happy with.
Yeah, it's luck based. But I'll tell you, like, Lilymo only operates because I don't take any money from it. Otherwise, we would not have enough money to operate even selling those numbers. So
I mean, I think you wouldn't take issue if somebody said, and probably if it wasn't for you and your, I guess fame is the right word.
Yeah, whatever it is.
They probably wouldn't sell as much as they are. I mean, there's
probably not. I think
that.
Hybraxia 1 sold really well without me, but that was before me, but that was like a Vita game, and that we really wanted the Vita market because we were doing really well on the Vita market, but once that went away, that was our niche,
Right.
So yeah, no, totally. I bring value to it. I'm not saying I don't. I just I think people think a lot of, and I'm not saying you think this, Dylan, but that a lot of people think that game developers are doing pretty well, and a lot of them are really like have nothing.
Especially with your partner, who sounds like I don't know how that world works, but I would assume if you're in that job, once you lock in, it's possible to stay in the same area for a long time. With games, man, you're Seattle, then you're LA, then you're San Francisco, then you're San Diego. I mean, it's not a nomad life, but it's starting to become one. So I'd take that year and really take advantage of it if that's a real option for you.
Cool. Thanks, guys. You got
All
time
right,
for the
Dylan,
religion
thank you,
question
buddy.
too, or no?
No, we got to run. Thank you, buddy.
Bye, Dylan.
Thanks.
All right, last call of the day. ABNJ has been waiting a long time. ABNJ, or who I like to call ABNJ. What is up, champion?
Hey, Colin, Jaffe, dude. I'm a longtime fan of both of you.
Thank you, sir.
Love the whole God of War series. And Colin, I'm sorry to do this to you because it'll make you feel old, but I've been listening to you since around like 2010. I'm 24 now, so I was around 11 then. So I've been listening to you for over half my life now. This is kind of a surreal experience. But I just have one quick question about the whole like trans ideology. And I want to know to you, Jaffe, what separates transgenderism from, say, like transracialism or trans species? Like it seems like we all recognize someone like Rachel Dolezal is ridiculous for pretending to be black. But if she says that she genuinely feels black, or threatens that it would make her suicidal if she can't express herself in this way, what's the difference between that and transgenderism?
Well, I mean, they're depending on what, and I'm very high right now, sir, but I'll do my best. Depending on what category, right? I mean, scientifically speaking and data-wise, we have evidence of people who have been trans since, I wouldn't say since we were keeping records, but for many thousands of years. I don't think we have a lot of evidence to suggest the transracial thing you're talking about. But even so, I mean, okay, if that's what she feels like, what do I care? I mean, I don't understand your question. Like, what are you asking me?
So if you say that if that's what she feels like, you don't care, is there a line somewhere? Like, what about trans species? What about people that say they identify as a cat or whatever?
Why should there ever, what do I care? Why do you care if somebody says they identify as a cat? Okay.
I'm not saying I care, but like, do you recognize that as valid? Do you not see it any difference between that and
I'm agnostic on
I was going to say, I totally understand what you're saying, ABNJ. I was going to say, like, isn't it a breach of reality is what I would say. Like, what is the breach of reality and what isn't is what I would say. Like, so is it reality that's
serious about that, right? You can say that, but there's all kinds of, like, when I say I'm agnostic on this stuff, I mean it. Like, I don't know that person's experience. I don't fucking know what they're experiencing. But I also know that we go through the day doing all kinds of shit where we deny reality. We get in a car and we think we're going to be fine, so we don't put on a seatbelt. Well, I'll be fine. I'm just going down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things we do that we ignore, things that we call reality. I mean, if you're going to be real dogmatic about it, you have to apply it to everything, don't you? The idea of your embracing of only things that are totally real, like, you know, God.
Yeah, I personally would be fine taking that deal to say like, okay, God isn't real and there's no such thing as a two-spirit person. And there's no such thing as a poly person or a pan person or whatever. I'm totally comfortable with that, taking that deal.
Okay.
You know,
AB, but AB, I don't mean to be flip with your question. I respect it and I appreciate what you're asking, but my answer is there's no line for me because it's none of my business. Why do I have a seat at the table deciding where the line is?
It's more so just about like Colin was saying, breach of reality. I think a lot of people just, you know, there's a certain line that you feel this is reality and this isn't, and you don't want to kind of have that enforced upon you, like you have to pretend.
Well, that's the real essence, isn't it? This idea that something is, because that's where I think a lot of this passion, anger, whatever comes from, is there's people out there that seem to think, because I hear it in the language when people push back on this, that it's being forced on you, that it's being forced down your throat. I'm more curious about that. How do you feel that the trans ideology has been forced on you?
It's more so just like in like an employment setting, you know, you always have the trainings and whatnot, like you have to affirm someone's preferred pronouns or identity or whatever. And I'm fine with that, but it's just, you know, if in a few years, you know, people start saying
but I want to know now, what has made you feel that the ideology has made your life difficult because it's being pushed on you? Because this is what I'm getting at. I'm not saying
it's like, you know, made my life significantly more difficult or something. It just, you do see these blocks being put in place that are enshrining these things into like, this is how you have to behave in certain settings. Like I think even Colin mentioned earlier in the
you have to do it?
Yeah, Jaffe, I feel like this is kind of like where do you have to do it? It's like, that's what I was saying was there was a bill, and I don't know if it was in where it was in Colorado or the Dakotas or somewhere in the Midwest that was just vetoed, simply saying that like you have to be a biological woman to play with women's sports at the high school level, the college level, whatever. To act like just because you don't get personally affected by something doesn't mean the society around you doesn't get affected by something. I use the example to you of like when I lived in Santa Monica, just the ridiculous gay flag propaganda just everywhere. It's like, does that affect my life and like make me want to cry? No, I'm like, no, it's just propaganda. I'm allowed to identify it for what it is. And it just because it doesn't have a deep and lasting effect on my life doesn't mean it doesn't have a material effect on my life. Of course it does. There's all these little things. It's chip damage. And we all know that, you know, like,
I don't, because the way it's talked about as is, and that's why I'm asking. I'm not like, you know, doing a trick or something. When I'm asking, it's because personal anecdotes are important to me on this issue, because it's so easy to go, oh, it's happening everywhere. Don't you see it? And I'm like, no, I really don't, but maybe you do. Give me some examples. But the quality of like, if the trans flag propaganda, as you're saying, was reduced in a connection with the amount of anti-trans legislation was reduced, I think the trans community, not that I can speak for them, would probably take that deal. But I think their position might be, we'll get rid of the flags when you stop making it illegal for me to take care of my child just because you don't understand the journey we're on.
Yeah, I do generally believe in parental rights, so it's like I don't really want to get in the way of that.
Well, that was more for AB. No, I mean, I know you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, so I appreciate the response. I don't want to retread, you know, the same ground over again. I do have another
AB.
Yeah.
I just like it. I like it. It's AB. It's the alphabet.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's my first initials and then New Jersey.
Oh, I didn't say I cared where it came from. I just respect it as a good name.
Well, thank you. But I do have another quick question about gaming for Colin, if you have the time.
Sure,
baby. Come on.
So, Colin, I respect your stance on Last Stand of like, you know, everyone just plays what they want to play. It's not like an IGN situation where you just have, you know, you're forced to play shit that you don't want to play. But I also feel like to some extent, gaming should be more than just a leisure activity for you. Like when a game like Fortnite comes out, I think it's kind of insane that you've never given this game a few hours of your time when it's had such a monumental effect on the whole industry. Like, this is the North Star for all live service and games as service games. And, I feel like it would just benefit your analysis of the industry to like give a game like this a few hours of your time. And also something like PSVR 2, like you're a hardcore PlayStation podcast, and I think you've only played a few hours of the Horizon game. So do you feel like, I don't know, just there should be more?
What about Horizon? I platinumed both Horizon games.
No, on PSVR 2.
Oh, yeah, PSVR. Oh, yeah. No.
Like I don't think you've played anything else on PSVR 2.
No, I haven't. I'm sorry, I'm
not mistaken. So do you feel like, I don't know, just as a service to the audience, maybe you should spend more time playing games, not just as a leisure activity, but kind of an academic exercise? Not because you'll enjoy Fortnite, but because you think you could learn something from it and it would give you some more insight when you talk about live service on the shows?
I mean, I can see your argument, but I just reject playing games that way. I don't think I really need the context because I don't pay attention to those kinds of games or claim to have any authority on them, really. We talk about Helldivers being like a really unique experience for me because I usually don't even play, multiplayer games or games as a service or anything like that. And so it's a new and fresh experience. I actually think that there's an advantage in staying away from a lot of things too. I often say this about, like, people hated Forspoken. I didn't think it was like great, but I thought it was good. And I was like, this game is really being beat up upon us for fucking like teenage girls. I'm a 39-year-old man. I mean, like, how hard am I going to be on this? But a lot of people are being like, oh, the Marvel dialogue. And I'm like, you know what, dude, since I don't watch fucking Marvel filth every fucking 5 seconds, I was kind of immune to that because I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, it's Marvel dialogue. I'm like, I don't know what that even means. And so not having that context actually allowed me to enjoy something for what it was. I appreciate that people want me to play more games and stuff like that. I think I play plenty. I play probably 30 to 50 hours a week or something like that. I've also kind of accidentally become the CEO of Last Stand, and I co-own a game developer, as you guys know, and we have several games in development, and I've already written 4 games that are out. So it's like I'm doing a lot of different things. So it's hard to like keep up with everything. The PlayStation expertise thing, as far as like going off to other platforms, like I just kind of ignore that feedback. I mean, I appreciate that people have it, but my success has been entirely predicated on my PlayStation expertise. I don't know how people don't know that or see that. And so changing that and becoming like some agnostic person, like every other person on YouTube or every other podcast, would be incredibly uncompetitive for me and stupid to do. Which is why instead of having more podcasts with me on it, we had more podcasts in the ecosystem done by people that do Sacred like I do. And it has been an incredibly lucrative endeavor for us. So that's not going to change. The playing like more games or a more variety of games, I just contend that between the 3 of us, we have a pretty good spectrum and feel on that. I don't really need that expertise because Chris brings that, just like Chris doesn't need to play Final Fantasy VII because I'm playing it. So I appreciate the feedback, but it's just, we have a pretty good rhythm. And the one thing that I never want to go back to is just the way I felt at IGN. I was very grateful for that job. I was there for many years. I was at IGN for 12 years as a freelancer and intern, and then as an editor. And it was incredibly panic inducing, like having copies of all these games a month early or 2 months early and having to play everything and hit all these embargoes. It's fucking, you want to talk about joylessness in video games, get into that regimen and just go look at my trophies if you want one day. And you can see like the machine gun of games that you experience that you never really get a full breadth of, that you have to review or you're previewing or you're doing this or that. I'm never going back to that. Like, and so that's like a non-starter for me. I'm not going back to that. It was horrible. Like from an experiential point of view, I don't have to do that.
And something you said to me on your show the other day about, if you were to start again in YouTube, you would niche. I mean, there are not so many, but there are a number of YouTube channels that are really into VR and really into PSVR 2. It's not very big, of course, but there's an entire channel that's just super into streaming games, like the Stadia service or Game Pass Cloud. So you can find that out there. And I think that's one of the great things about where we're at now, that you can find whatever the fuck you want. ABNJ, thank you for calling, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Be well.
My last question for you, Colin. It's been a long time and I appreciate it, buddy.
It's all good, man. We record this long all the time on my show.
I'm high. It feels like I live in a tent. What? I don't know what's happening, Colin. Look, the Bible. I'm going to have God speak through me and I'm going to open up a passage. When you say stop, I'm going to stop flipping through it. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, I'm flipping now.
Stop.
Okay, and then tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay, my finger is on this passage. You ready? Oh God, it's tiny. And they are, wait, this is the blessing that Moses, the man of God, pronounced, and he on the Israelites before his death. He said, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned over them. Who cares? There's nothing there for me.
We have no context.
There's nothing there for me.
Yeah.
Colin, the new guy starts today at PlayStation, or yesterday, Toki Roki.
Yeah. Hiroki Totoki Literature Club.
Oh yeah. What do you think? What do you think the biggest, like, what do you think his biggest effect is going to be when he walks out in a year? That you think he's going to shut a bunch of shit down? Do you think he's going to bring some kind of brilliant renaissance to the group? What do you think is going to happen? I
don't know if there's another shutdown in the cards. I was surprised that Media Molecule actually survived, but they did. They're small and they won a BAFTA and stuff. Like, they have some prestige. I'm sure that they don't want to shut them down, but I feel like efficiency is like what seems. It's funny you say this because I was just rereading the things he was saying in the recent financials from last quarter, and he gave an interview recently that was translated, and it just seems like efficiency. He was very kindly in his, and you know Japanese companies very well. Like he was saying in his very Japanese way about Bungie, like, these guys are unaccountable.
Yeah,
that was basically what I got from his paragraph about them, about being very hard workers and dedicated and all of that. But then at the end, he's like, but they seem very flippant with money and timelines, and it's like they're unaccountable. And you know how I feel about this. I think this was a major boondoggle and a total mistake acquiring them.
Yeah.
But it simply doesn't make any sense for Bungie to exist where Sony runs Bungie when they needed Bungie to help them learn how to run their games as a service.
Right.
So I can't underline how much of a mistake that was if that's the way it turns out, because they just lost everything that mattered about them. And now they have to worry and dump resources into them instead of 2 more Last of Us style projects,
Right.
you know?
What? Okay, well, I've related, but okay, Stellar Blade demo just dropped. People can glean a lot from it, I think. Obviously, Ronin's out. Helldivers is doing bang up business. What do you think of this trio? Do you think this is going to be like really successful for them and their 2024 is because I mean, Helldivers already is. I like all 3 of these games. I'm not a big multiplayer guy, so I'm not playing a lot of Helldivers. I love the Stellar Blade demo. Thought it was excellent. A lot of fun. Haven't played Ronin yet, but I think I'll like it a lot for what it is. But none of those games seem typical Sony exclusive. I know they're not first party, but they're exclusives, and one's a second party. Do you think they're going to take from that? Maybe, like, what do you think they're going to take from this trio? Like, maybe we can do less expensive cinematic games and be all right, or
maybe I feel like I'm actually curious what they learned about the games as a service cancellations. If that means it's like, we're going to revert to what we usually did, or are we going to still extract more value out of the dollars we spend? So I don't think there's any going back to this idea that they're going to do exclusively AAA style, like God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon level games only, which was really what they were doing. Think about it. After your game came out and Killstrain, and then you had like Medieval and the Shadow of the Beast remake and all this random shit, but then they just stopped making those mid-tier games. And then what they started realizing, when you learned this from the Insomniac leak, is they were starting to maybe think about splitting their games into pieces and started selling them that way. And they're like, no, we make more revenue, but it's less net, so we shouldn't do that. So I think they're trying to figure out a way to just wring the towel more and more. So I just don't think there's any reality where he was pretty clear, like, we can't spend this much money and make this much money. 8% margins is too risky. And it's just not nearly enough. So I want to see, what I want to see, Jaffe, is how AAA Concord and or Fair games are, to see what their intent is there, because Helldivers is not a AAA game.
No,
it's an A game. Like,
there's some definite jank there. Absolutely. It would not clear Naughty Dog's threshold.
Right. It's not like Housemarque made it, where it's like this really fluid, insanely nice, and that's fine. It's awesome. I mean, Helldivers is great the way it is, but I think they see a lot of value there. But I also think that I hope they realize that they are not going to have phenomenons like that very often, if ever again. I mean, like, you could look at it as 8 dice rolls that they're about to do, right? Yeah. And they already hit one of the dice rolls, which just makes the other ones less likely to hit.
You're talking about just the service games, though, right?
Like you're right. Fair Games and Concord, like all those games, and the Horizon. There's 2 Horizon games because there's 3 because there's the Horizon 3, there's the Horizon MMO, and the Horizon multiplayer game. They're going to have a lot of mouths to feed, and I hope they realize that it's not always going to be like this for them. I think they only need 1 to 2 big exclusive first party games from single player a year. As long as they continue to fill in the gaps with second and third party games, which is what they've done. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Final Fantasy VII, in my opinion, you could disagree. You know this a lot better than I do. It seems to me that Ronin, Last of Us Part 2, Ronin, Stellar Blade, Helldivers, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was some sort of intentional, overwhelming amount of games to be like, oh, there can be no complaints about the level of games on our, just because they're not coming from Naughty Dog or Sucker Punch right now doesn't mean we have no games. And I feel like they really front loaded. So what I want to see, and I think they did that intentionally, not only to get into the fiscal year and hopefully sell more units, but I think they did that to say, like, everyone calm down. It's totally fine. At the same time that they knew that they were going to be probably divesting from some of these games and ultimately canceling them. Like the Deviation news was so funny because I reported like a year ago, I was like, that game's canceled. That game's done. That game's not coming out. And then everyone's like, it's canceled. I'm like, yeah, I know, dude. Like, I know people that worked on that game. Like, it is canceled. So is it going to be really empty later in the year? Possibly. I wonder where Venom is, that game that's supposed to be kind of in there. And I wonder if that will be a fall game. And then Concord is supposed to come out this year.
And when did they put out the God of War Valhalla? That was into last year, right?
That was last year. Yeah, I believe it was in December.
What about? So I'll tell you something. The ones that have me more excited though are Stellar Blade and Ronin. Not because they're necessarily Game of the Year games, but it's nice to see exclusive to Sony stuff that doesn't have to just be everything's a swing for the fucking fence. Sometimes it's nice to just go to a fucking matinee that's like, this is the best movie in the world. No, but it's a lot of fun. It was a good way to spend a Sunday, you know? I dig that. And I hope because they don't cost as much, we'll see more of that. I don't think we're ever going to necessarily go back to the Parappa the Rapid days of little weird, quirky indies, but having some good AA games that Sony actually is exclusive, I think that's an important part of your, portfolio. At least I think as a gamer it is. I don't know if business wise it's going to play.
Yeah, I don't think it should. I just think it's the business. Like, I just think they look at it, and you've had this conversation a million times where it's like, they don't want to spend $10 million and make $25 million. They couldn't give a fuck, you know, like they really could. And I just think that you come from these days with Twisted Metal, where games were sometimes hundreds of thousands,
$850,000 for TM1, and it made crazy millions.
Yeah, like hundreds of millions or whatever. It makes. It's like that's what they want, but they can't get it that way. There's no way they can put in that few development costs and get something like that anymore. Comparable
so
to what the market
business
expects.
Just to keep making 8 dice rolls as often as they can.
Right. I just
Haven's game, Jade Raymond's game.
Yeah, fair game.
Haven, I mean, all I've seen is the trailer. I don't know if you've seen any more than that.
No, I haven't.
I thought it looked incredibly dull and generic. I mean, was that just me? And maybe a lot of people
everyone has said that. Everyone has said that, but again, this is kind of what I was saying about exposing yourselves and then exposing yourself to certain thing and underexposing yourself. Is everyone's like, oh, this is like a fucking Ubisoft Tom Clancy game or something. I'm like, I don't know. I don't play that shit. Really, I play Far Cry or whatever, but I don't. So to me, I'm like, oh, it's kind of cool. It's like you're robbing the rich or whatever. But everyone's like, oh, that's like this, and this. And I'm like, I just don't have those comparative points. So people are much more excited about Concord. And I'm like, I don't really know why, because we don't know anything about
in a spaceship. That's all we've seen.
Yeah, like, so I'm very curious. They have to say more soon. I don't know. Like, because Ghost of Tsushima might even be this year. I suspect Ghost of Tsushima is probably this year as well. I don't have any information on that, but it's about time, I would say. Yeah. And I think they were hiring for some like temporary marketing gigs and stuff like that related to so you can put 2 and 2 together. But I think they're just fine. I wonder what maybe the last 2 years of PS5 will look like, and if they're going to come out swinging with the new console too, with the Pro, they're going to have some games that show on that. So
yeah,
I do wonder what they're going to do there as well. I'm excited about that thing just to see.
Are you have any interest in jumping into Dragon's Dogma 2 or not your cup of tea?
No, it's not really my cup of tea. It looks cool, but yeah, I don't know. I'd rather spend my time with Japanese role-playing games. I'm sorry?
Unicorn Overlord you might play or not?
Yeah, I'd like to play that. My wife's playing that.
Yeah, I know,
now,
it's
and she's
great.
really enjoying it. She talked. Oh yeah, you guys talked about it on
Yeah.
Summon Sign, and she loves it. I am definitely going to check it out. I like Vanillaware a lot, but there's just so many things stacked up because I got to get through Rebirth, which is like I can't believe how overwhelmingly big that game is. It's really interesting, actually. I feel like it's almost part of the meta itself that they were like, oh, this is when Final Fantasy VII Original opens up, so we're really gonna open this game up,
Right.
And I think that's kind of interesting and maybe intentional. And then I got to play that Pacific Drive game. I want to play. I bought Hi-Fi Rush and I bought Pentiment to show my support. So I gotta play those at some point as well. And there's just a bunch of things to get through. But it doesn't seem like a very voluminous amount of games for me coming out later in the year. So I think I'll have plenty of time to.
Yeah, I got to get to a point where I can get comfortable with how I play, because I never finish anything. And I know I'm not going to finish Dragon's Dogma 2, but I want to. I got to figure it out. Colin, thank you, buddy. I sure do appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I don't know if we've changed hearts or minds, but I hope you had fun, Colin. And
I did. It was great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. And Glasshole Games, thank you for rejoining there. I appreciate it, buddy. Michael Batty says, Kratos, I'm just going to all of them. I have no idea what that means, but thank you for that. I'm going to go sleep off this fucking high and dream about the baby Jesus.
Oh, fair enough.
What are you doing the rest of the day? What are you doing?
I already worked out today, so I think I'm going to go out, walk the dogs, and then play some Final Fantasy probably. Get some hours in tonight.
Cool, man. All right. Well, thank you for doing it, Colin. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. I can leave. I can X out of this.
I'm going to X out right now too.
All right.
I'm out, motherfuckers.
Right.
Thank you,
Bye, guys. Thank you. Be well.
Thank you very much. Bye, you guys. Thanks, Colin. I'm just kidding. I'm not really. I'm kidding. I am going to leave, but let me just say hi to the chat over there. Fellas, thank you guys for watching. This is going to go behind the paywall now for about a week, and then it'll be free to watch if you haven't seen the whole thing, or you can subscribe and watch it right away or in the next 30 minutes. I might be too high to work the computer at this point. All right. Oh, Lord have mercy. Be well, you guys. Bye.